welcome back to another episode of Xbox Infinite. We are one guest down, I'm just going to say from the outset. At the moment, we're just waiting on Ty Guy. We think he's got his times mixed up, but he will be here when he gets here, if he gets here. But we've got Ains of the Season Gaming Bitcast. Man, it was awesome spending time with you out there with in FanFest. And it's great to have you on the show finally. Welcome to the show. What have you been up to?
Yeah, no doubt, man. Thank you. What's up, everyone? Yeah, man, we had a great time out in LA, dude. Seriously. And I know we've been talking about trying to do a show together. Sometimes timing doesn't work out, but glad to finally be here. Looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. We're going to have some of these review discussions about Starfield, maybe a little bit of an Elden Ring smoke in there. Infinite, welcome back. How's your week been? What have you been up to?
Oh, man, good to be back with you all. I have been Starfield with joy. Right now, pulling myself away from the game to talk with you guys. I'm tired too, man. If you all hearing me in the chat, I am tired because I have been just enamored by this game. Honestly, I'm so mad to see some of these reviews, and you can't tell me at this point that it's not agenda laden. So I just refuse to believe it. But other than that, yeah, I just did my podcast the other day. Enjoyed that. Had a good time with Silent Cypher and C Money as guests. Really good time. And yeah, happy to be here with you guys tonight. Thank you for being here with us, Ains.
Was it a 6-hour show?
Oh, absolutely.
What'd you say, Riz?
Was it a 6-hour show this week, or did you keep it down to the 3?
Half of that. About 2 hours and 30 minutes. Yeah.
JediKnightPeter, welcome back. How are you? How's your week been? What have you been up to? What have you been playing? Pete?
Week has been awesome because Starfield has begun and I just absolutely love it. I don't roleplay that much in games, but in this game, I'm role-playing. Not many games can get me to do that. Absolutely love everything about it. Glad you can join us, Ains. Do this.
Thank you.
Absolutely Blue, welcome back. How are you? I'm going to stop there because it rhymes.
What an intro. Hey, hello chat, good morning or evening wherever you are, and I am so excited to talk to Ains tonight. I haven't really got to talk to you since FanFest. I know, I think you're my gaming twin because we pop back and forth all the time with back and forth about games, like the Nintendo Direct the other day, which I don't want to ever talk about, but anyway, I'm excited to hear about that.
No, we actually do have that as a topic. We are going to sort of talk about it a little bit, but only from the Riskit negative towards Nintendo perspective. Look, before we jump into the show and get into the topics, we did miss a super chat from last week, and I really hate doing that. It was Udani Quizada with a $5 super chat, and he said, "What will be in landfills more? Copies of ET on Atari or the PlayStation Portal?" So I'm going to say PlayStation Portal. I don't actually know because they won't get bought. Well, that's why they'll be in landfill. Anyway, we'll jump into the topic. So we do, please hit the like button. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. We go live 8 p.m. every Friday EST. If you're in Australia, I believe it's 10 a.m. in the east, and if you are in the west, it's 8 a.m. because apparently we have a couple of west viewers. So that's always nice to know. I didn't think we had any, and no one cared. But moving on, Starfield reviews. This is what we were talking about in the green room. So, I have a sort of a couple of questions because if you don't know, Ains actually has a website, Season Gaming. It's you do reviews, you do opinion pieces, basically everything to do with gaming is there in the website, and you do a lot of reviews. And it's not just you, is it? It's a couple of guys. It's a few of you that do the reviews. Is that right?
Yeah. We have about 12 people actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a fully fledged site. I highly recommend it. It is down in the description, so you can go and check that out as well. But we also had Ty Guy coming in, and he'll probably come in later. We wanted to discuss, and if you don't know, Ty Guy was in the space with Dan Stapleton, the man who did the review for IGN on Starfield. So I did just want to have a bit of a back and forth, bit of a conversation around reviews, how they're done. And I've got a sort of a question. I'm going to go to you on this, Ains. I've got a sort of a question because I found it really odd that Dan Stapleton did the review for Xbox. He gave it a 7, whatever. We've moved past it. However, he then followed up with a PC review that he also did and gave it a 7 there as well. So the PC version is going to be running at 60. Isn't that?
Yep.
Shouldn't that give you like at least a half a point, or give you a little bit more? Shouldn't you get something for that? I also found it odd that it was him that did the review on the PC as well. I mean, it was a perfect opportunity for someone else. We know that they got 13 codes. It was a perfect opportunity for someone like Ty Guy. Probably wouldn't have wanted him to do the review based on what I've heard him say, but based anyone else could have done the review.
You know, Starfield wasn't optimized for PC Risk. I mean, damn.
Yeah, I mean, it only runs at like 111 frames if you've got a 49, so it's terrible. Terrible. So what are your thoughts on that, Ains? Like, do you think that you, say within season game, you would have got someone else to do the PC review, or would you have done both?
To be honest, from our perspective, we wouldn't do a separate platform review unless there were like significant differences, or if they were released widely apart and there were significant differences. So I'm playing it on PC and Xbox. I have a new PC that runs it really well. So I've been playing Starfield in ultra wide, literally max everything as high as it can go at lock 60, and it's it's beautiful and it's super smooth. But it's excellent on Xbox too. My perspective, I don't know why they would publish a separate review. Because I've played both. It's the same game. Sure, frame rate's higher on PC, but for me personally, if I'm reviewing the game, I'm going to play it on both. But it's just going to be one review. My guess, and I'm not pointing fingers at IGN or any other site, but I just know how the space works. If you look in the kind of gaming sphere of SEO optimization right now, Starfield is everywhere. It's eating up all the bandwidth. And so you're seeing a lot of guides and a lot of articles and a lot of everything about Starfield, not only because it's super popular right now and it's a huge launch, but it's getting a lot of hits. So I think by publishing a second review, you're going to double capitalize on getting hits, even though there's not really any significant differences to really speak about.
Yeah, so it's are you saying it's clickbait?
Don't put words in my mouth, my friend. But I mean, I talk about that a lot. Like that's just not what we do. And there's reasons we don't do that, right? We're a small site, obviously. We're the complete antithesis of IGN being the biggest media outlet in the world, right? In gaming. So my perspective is usually a little different, but just from my perspective, playing both, and I'm up to about 35 hours or so. Mm-hmm. And I've played several hours on Xbox. I've played the majority on PC. And outside of the frame rate, which in my opinion, it's a nice 30 on Xbox, it's not disjointing to me personally. There's really not that big of a difference. So, and like I said, I'm playing it at max everything on a brand new PC. So, I don't know why you'd have two reviews. I would have just said this game's on Xbox and PC. Here's our review, period.
All right, so let me ask you it from a different skew. So say you were, and you guys haven't posted a review on Starfield from what I could find.
We have not.
No, but you are obviously planning on doing so.
Yes, we're kind of talking about it a few different ways because the game is so large. I'm also very picky about publishing reviews unless we finish the game. Right, that's a tenet of ours. But also, like a game this large, you have to put a huge, vast amount of time into to really experience most of what it has to offer, right? And this game is so big and so vast. I didn't want to race and put a review out there just to hit embargo that would not have really sufficed, in my opinion. We don't do that at Season Gaming. So, now that we're post-launch, what we're talking about is either doing like a panel discussion with a few of our editors who obviously are all playing Starfield, or doing something where like I do a video talking about, did this game kind of live up to expectations, not from a review perspective, but looking at some of the systems in the game, how it was designed, things that were talked about, etc. So that's a long-winded way to say we're going to do something on it. I'm just not kind of finalized on what it is yet. You're
not sold. I completely. And after sort of speaking to you at FanFest, I completely respect your sort of ethos and the way you run your site. What I love about it is it's just you don't chase clicks, you don't chase the money. You completely just do it for the love of gaming. And it's something that's quite refreshing within the media, and we're going to sort of get more into that media thing. But let me ask you one more question before I go to the panel. If you were to post 2 reviews, say an Xbox one and a PC one, would it be by the same person?
It depends. I know I'm kind of caveating a lot of my answers here, and I'm not trying to dodge the question. It depends. I think in this case, like I said, because the game is so similar, and someone like me who's going to do the majority of the write-up on it is playing both, it would probably just be me. But I think there is an argument to be made, especially with a game of Starfield's scope. One thing, as you know, on Bitcast I talked about, and I brought up as a viewpoint of mine, is that if you're playing a 10-hour linear game that is story-driven, right, that's an experience that is going to be the same for me as it is for you, as it is for Umbra, as it is for Holly, etc., right? Because the game's designed that way. Starfield is the antithesis of that. You can put 200 hours in this game, and my experience may be vastly different from everyone else on the panel, right? Because you've just chosen to do different things, and it is so complex and deep with its systems. Personally, for me, my viewpoint is that should matter. And so I would be more forgiving on some of the small things in the game, like, we discussed, like the lack of a local map or something like that, because of how many things the game is doing that other games don't do. So it's really, again, it comes down to methodology. And that's, again, a long-winded way, so I'm sorry, about saying it depends. I think in Starfield's case, one of the reasons we're discussing having a panel discussion on it is because all of our experiences are different, and I think it's good to have multiple viewpoints on the game.
Yeah, 110%. So, Umbra, I mean, recently we heard that someone just dropped a 4. I haven't seen this review, but Umbra, you have. I'm sort of curious, what do you think's going on it doesn't seem to be the same game that we're playing, and I definitely want to get into a bit of a discussion about like the game itself as well today, because we've all put in, I think I would probably have the least amount of hours out of a lot of us, and I've already put in 2 days, or just under 2 days. So, what do you think's going on? Where are these 4s coming from? What's the story with these lower reviews? Do you think it's an Xbox tax?
It's definitely an Xbox tax in some cases. This recent one seems to be aimed squarely at Bethesda, though, from the Jimquisition, if you all are wondering in the chat. And this person, I guess, is I don't know how this person is I don't know who made this person popular, because as I read it, I'm like, and I see some of his other reviews and things like that, or how he portrays himself, and I'm like, are people like that? They have like short attention spans and like loud noises. Is that what gets them? Because you just see him dancing around with his little top hat on, and it's like, okay, this guy's an idiot. Like, what about him is enticing to you? I don't get it. I really don't. And so I look at his.
So who is this guy?
Quote.
So tell us who this guy is.
Jimquisition is a pretty well-known guy. I mean, I don't want to go into detail right now because, one, I'm too tired to think on it. But two, this guy here, he did a review on Starfield, and he I guess had an agenda against Bethesda because I guess it was some employee situation with a trans employee of theirs, and they're talking about turf. He's talking about turf and all that in the review. So I'll read a snippet. He says, to call Starfield the least broken Bethesda game is akin to calling any single turf the least embarrassing fascist. Then again, given how ZeniMax and Bethesda seem to treat trans employees, that comparison may hit too close to home. See, like, I don't know how is that even allowed, where you have your issue with that company on a past issue, and you bring that into a review of a game and hold that against the game itself? How is that allowed? How is that fair? And a 4, as we all know, and Ains, I'm not sure what you guys' scale would be, but a 4 is pretty broken. That's a pretty broken game. It's a bad game. So Starfield is many things, but it's definitely not that. So how is that allowed? And this person has a review that actually weighs on the scale. This is not just a review that's thrown out there as fodder. And I know, I think we talk a lot about well, it doesn't matter to me what anybody thinks on this or their review. I don't care what they think either. But I do care that the integrity of what they're saying and what is going to ultimately matter to the score of a game should, hold weight and hold sway. Like, I don't hand wave that part. Like, what they're feeling and what they felt might not be what I feel. That's fine. But if you're saying anything, but it's not tied to integrity, as we talked about before here on the podcast, how can that be taken serious? Why should it be taken serious? And it diminishes the whole process of reviews. You may as well.
Why do they do it, Umbra? Because we're talking about it right now. That's why.
Yeah, I suppose, but they're not going to get any traffic from people like myself. I would never go to this person's YouTube, or I would never go to their site. I would never support them or click on anything that has anything to do with them. But some people will. That's the unfortunate part.
But I would argue that we're probably more the minority in gaming because we watch this stuff like a hawk, right? We're on a podcast on a Friday night talking about games and Xbox, right? So, like, not everybody has that level of commitment, right, to watching everybody's analysis and things like that. We, as humans, we tend to be like birds of a feather, right? We flock to things that are like-minded. So you watch certain reviewers because in the past you've found that you have a commonness, right, in thinking or perspective on things. And so when that keeps aligning, you go to those people. So they're not, you know what I mean? Like, so the average person who's a somewhat casual gamer isn't out, scouring the internet for all the opinions to try to find an educated, overall view. They're going to the one or two people that they've found that seem to, align with their thought process and then just trusting that, right?
I hope it's not this person.
Well,
yeah, and I would also add to that I think that's 100% right, Holly. And I'd also add to that people will go to people that will also boost their narrative. So this guy will then, get all the other people that have an Xbox tax, as Riskit said, because I think this game has had an Xbox tax. And then they'll go to these people and say, look, hey, this guy gave it a 4.
Just want to throw out there, Jim Quisition, I'm going to read this so to further elaborate, because Risk did ask who this person was. Jim Quisition, as he calls himself, is James Sterling, also known as Jim Sterling and the Commander Sterling and all this other nonsense, is a British freelance video game journalist, critic, and pundit, YouTuber, professional wrestler. Yeah, okay. Before becoming independent in September 2014, she apparently was the review editor of Destructoid and an author for The Escapist. Sterling is noted as one of the examples of a YouTuber achieving success through crowdfunding. This person has 787,000 followers on YouTube.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Look,
Destructoid was quite. I liked Destructoid in the past.
I know who this is now because I was just looking it up in the background because I'd never heard of this person, but I was just reading through the review and speed reading and skim reading as quickly as I could whilst listening as well. I can multitask like a champion. I got to the end of this and it says, it's sort of slightly out of context to start off with, but we'll roll through it. Nothing of this inspires awe, communicates scale, or delivers the sense of inhabiting a living, breathing universe. Starfield is small, a small game with a small vision. If you're the kind of person who thinks video games peaked with Fallout 3's launch version and they required they've neither, she rewrote that terribly, it neither requires evolution or improvement. This game is absolutely for you. If you believe Bethesda doesn't need to exhibit growth as an artistic outlet, hasn't had to change a thing about the way it's made games since 2018, I can safely say you'll adore Starfield because it's all that a Bethesda game has always been and literally nothing more. Starfield is a shallow ocean hiding its lack of creative ambition behind the physical size of a universe that's minuscule where it counts. In short, it's everything that a fan of these games could love. I just want to point out real quickly that I've seen a lot of these Starfield reviews that have been very contradictory in their words. So she's saying it's shallow. It's got creative ambition behind the physical size, but then she's also saying it's small. she says basically saying, very basically, it's big and it's small. I was reading through the rest of the review and it just does scream absolute bias before you even did the review. Should those reviews be taken seriously? This stuff needs to stop. There needs to be a framework for this. There needs to be some sort of like Metacritic needs to, instead of just passing as a website that does. Now, that's a question that we could ask Ains here. I do want to go to you on this. Your reviews show up on Metacritic?
They show up on OpenCritic. We're not on Metacritic.
You're not on Metacritic, but do you know the process for being verified on Metacritic so that your reviews do count?
Not on Metacritic, no. Haven't gone through it.
Okay, but for OpenCritic, we can get I would say it would be a similar. Yeah.
So on OpenCritic, you have to apply, obviously, and you have to provide all your credentials as an outlet. And they do a review of things you've published in the past. Obviously, as with anything in this industry, I think your audience size will play a factor in that. So I think that, if I take where you're going on this, and I have similar complaints, it's that how do some of these outlets / reviews, editorials, what have you, get onto these aggregate sites when it's pretty clear that they don't necessarily have the same objective. I can't say the word objectivity in the space of their what they publish as other outlets.
Yeah, well, that is absolutely. Yeah, how does this get in? And this is where I really think, and we've had this discussion many, many times. I guess we're going to have it again. But
Travis needs permission, mate.
Absolutely. I'll absolutely. Well, beautiful. We've got Travis from IGN jumping in. Just give me 2 seconds and I'll get all that set up. But before I jump over to do that, shouldn't we have a framework for reviews? Should there not be a framework that you have to submit to Metacritic and say, this is our framework, this is how we operate? Is that something that OpenCritic asks? Did they ask how you do reviews and instead of just reviewing what you've reviewed? Reviewing the reviewer, which I've done a little bit of this.
No, it's not. And I don't know. I think on that point, I think I know we talked about this in LA too, but I think that's really tough because you may have an opinion of what a review should consist of and how it should be structured and what should be in a review and who should do it and all those things. And I think we all do, right? But how do you standardize that? And do you really want to live in a place? This is going to sound kind of weird, but do we really want to be in a place where we have only a set way that reviews can be done?
Well, I think if things are standardized, then it gives what's the word for it? Consistency, trust. I think the trust is not there at the minute.
No, I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm saying who decides, right? Like who would decide what a standardized review looks like, right? Like you may have a different opinion of what a standardized or what a framework, to use your word, what a framework should be for review versus me or versus Travis or Holly or anyone else, right? Mm-hmm. So who would have the final say in that? I think ACG is a guy I've had on the channel and he came up this week, right? Because he's obviously a big player in the YouTube review space, right? Good dude, talk to him a lot. And he came out with his review scale years ago, which is the whole buy, rent, wait for sale type thing, which kind of was very different from what we were used to seeing in magazines and things with just your numbered scores, right? Mm-hmm. So if your framework at a time would have said, a review contains X and it is structured this way, and then it has a scoring scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 20, whatever that may be, then where would ACG have gone in that conversation? Do you see what I mean? There's no room for someone to create something kind of new or to give a different kind of perspective.
Yeah, but I think you're sort of stepping into creators there, right? And I think that's where there's been a bit of a resurgence or a surgence of creators because there has been a loss of trust in maybe not all media, but I would say, definitely Metacritic. I think I think the conversation is always, at the moment, the Xbox guys are like, well, you can't take Metacritic seriously. When Spider-Man reviews and someone gives it a 6 and it comes down to a 80-something, well, you can't take Metacritic seriously. And I think that's a bit of a problem for Metacritic.
Justified, though?
But is it what the review itself? That is the thing, isn't it? Though
No.
Welcome to the show,
it's the
Ty
lack
Guy.
of trust,
I
Justified.
absolutely,
Hi, welcome. Hi.
absolutely,
Hey,
wanna-
what's up, dude?
absolutely
What's
want
up?
to
I'm
intro
here.
you in, man. This is Ty Guy. He reviews for IGN. Welcome to the show, man. It's great to have you on. How are you doing? What are you up to? How's things been this
I'm
week?
good. Sorry I'm late. I was caught in a VO session for my Lies of P review, which I just finished today, so I totally missed what time it was and completely forgot I was supposed to be here. So my apologies.
I told him. I said he just got the time mixed up. Don't. That's. I know that's
Yeah.
what it is.
I thought you were mad
apologize.
about the
It was-
M&Ms.
No, I wasn't mad about the M&Ms, I promise. It was literally just my recording studio at home is I have to step into a closet and I put a blanket over my head and the mic to isolate all the sound, and I'm basically just in like a box for 30 minutes or however long it takes to record the VO. So I completely lost track of time. Sorry about that.
It's all good, all good, all
I'm-
good.
I'm
But
glad
yeah,
we've already jumped into the discussion. I already have so many opinions, and
this is why we're getting you on, man. Like you do have some opinions. Obviously, you would assume that all of us have. Well, I mean, I can tell you that all of us disagree with the rating that IGN gave it, Dan. I did speak to Dan about some options, some ways that you could maybe structure reviews so that they are. But one thing I want to say is, and you did point it out on Bitcast, and you said you need to have those numbers, and you do. Otherwise, you can't aggregate scores, and I do believe that aggregate scores, are something that is needed. It's something that's needed. It's a tool for you to look at, for consumers to look at the aggregate score and go, okay, this is something I want to look at. Maybe I'll go check out a reviewer that I like and I'll read his review. And then maybe I'll talk to a friend and then he'll give me his opinion. And then I can use my aggregate score, my reviewer that I like to go and listen to, and my friend, and they're all telling me it's good. Okay, I'm going to go buy this game. So I do believe aggregate scores are important. And that's where, ACG obviously doesn't get involved in those aggregate scores. And he serves another purpose, to your point, Ains. I think he's that guy. For me, it's Skill Up. So for me, I go to Skill Up to see what he thinks of the game because he usually aligns with how I think about games. Maybe not on Bethesda games, but we can have that other conversation later. So framework wise, should there be a framework for, and just to give context, Ty Guy, Travis, they just I think what was her name? James Stephanie Sterling from the Jimquisition just released a review that was a 4, but referenced a lot of things that are not really related to the game. And I think for personal reasons and personal issues that she has with Bethesda, the review score was lower than it should have been, and that's a problem. I don't think that should exist in the industry.
I would take issue with the characterization of it being lower than it should have been. It's her opinion, right? So, who decides what it should be? That's my problem with it. Look, I haven't read the review. I read the verdict, the paragraph that they have on Metacritic, and I would say everything that was in that paragraph is what I would consider fair game. Like, they basically said, like, hey, look, for me, this game feels backwards. It feels like it's in the past. Like it does a lot of things that Bethesda's always been good at, but doesn't really do a lot of things new. I can understand why somebody would feel that. I haven't read the review and don't know about if there's context about stuff that has nothing to do with the game. If you know my opinions about reviews, I hate it when people talk about stuff that isn't in the game because, you're talking about a framework and people love to bring that up. Mostly people who have no idea what a review is or what a best practices review is. But it's not like there's no best practices in reviews. Like there are things you can do to isolate noise that has nothing to do with a game, right? Like I reviewed Hogwarts Legacy, and that's a game where some outlets lost a lot of my respect when they referenced things that had nothing to do with what was in the game. And I don't think that that has any role in a review. That's answering the question of, is it moral to play a game? Not is the game good? And I think that those are separate questions. And a review should answer, is the game worth your time? Is it a good game? Which is a completely subjective question. But when people try to like mathematize a review, it's just it's impossible. If there was a way to do it, somebody would have figured it out already, and we'd only have one reviewer, and that person would just be right.
Oh, I know. I see.
All agree, but that's just not how the world works.
I think you've got the wrong idea about what I mean about framework. And so I'm not saying to mathematize, and I don't think we on the show have said to mathematize it, but I mean a framework as in this is how it's done. This is what, and what you're saying is best practices, but best practices that are industry wide. Because at the moment, they're not industry-wide. I think we can definitely agree on that. And if you do read through this review later on for the Jimquisition, there's things referenced from, like you said, that are from outside the game, that aren't to do with the game itself, to do with the studio.
Give me an example.
I'm going to have to scroll down. She referenced Umbra. I'm going to go to you because you said it and I can't find it. I'm scrolling down through this review. I've read it really, really quickly. She referenced.
Yeah, it's.
He was referencing an ex-colleague that worked there that had negative Yeah. Sorry, Umbra. I don't know if you're there, bro.
Yeah, I'm here. So Jimquisition says to call Starfield the least broken Bethesda game is akin to calling any single turf the least embarrassing fascist. And again, given how ZeniMax and Bethesda seem to treat trans employees, that comparison may hit close to home. My thing is this,
Yeah,
Travis,
that's terrible.
and thank you for joining us, by the way, brother.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. The thing about it for me is I agree with what you were saying. However, I don't think this person is basing their review off of just what they played, and that's the problem I have with it. And I think they're taking an agenda they have outside of that, and because they have an issue with Bethesda and holding that against the game itself. Which is why I feel like I just feel like it's a lack of integrity behind it.
Yeah, so I agree with you then. I like I said, I hadn't read it, but that's correct. Like it's not the reason I don't really like talking about the whole framework and best practices thing is because people get very quickly jump into hey, well, you can write objective reviews, and I hate that conversation because it's just so wrong. But you guys are right that if it's a review of the game, it should be focused on the game, and people who don't do that don't have any business writing reviews.
Oh, I can't wait to get into that conversation because I did want to.
Sorry, Biscuit. I was just going to say we had obviously like both Travis and I reviewed Hogwarts Legacy to his point, and obviously, as we all know, there was a lot of talk around that game and its release due to creator of Harry Potter and all of that conversation that surrounded it. And there were reviews that really dove into that, and you could tell it affected their review. And Travis and I quickly
gave it a 0.
Oh yeah, so let me clarify. There was an outlet that wrote a scathing review of Hogwarts Legacy and scored it poorly, and that outlet does not score their reviews. They changed their own process just to shit on Hogwarts Legacy and drag down its score. Like if you're doing that, like you've lost the plot. So like I'm not saying
and they said they didn't even play the game, so that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, there's edge cases like that, but my point is I think it's overblown. People will point at one or two places that do this. Like Jimquisition right now is the only negative review on Metacritic for Starfield. All the others are mixed or positive. All of them. There's one negative review.
I think it's one other one. I think it's a 56 that they put in after 5 hours of playing or something like that.
It was DualShockers. No, it wasn't DualShock.
So, Travis, we were talking about this before. Do you think that these are just clickbait articles? I mean, it is so hard to get traffic through whatever medium you're trying to push it out through, whether that be whether that be IGN or whether that be a YouTuber like ACG. Do you think a lot of these people just do it for traffic?
I think people say that because they don't understand the industry. It's not hard to get clicks if you're a big outlet like IGN. We could publish our Starfield review 2 weeks after the game comes out, and it would get millions of hits. That's really not a problem. There's like very
IGN,
certain,
to be clear.
For IGN. Yeah. So I actually talked about this with Ains because I also came from an indie outlet. Like my first jobs were unpaid review work at indie outlets. That's how I cut my teeth in the industry, right? I did it the hard way, right? And those people, they have way more pressure to do things like force the review out in time for embargo, because if they don't hit it at time of embargo when people are doing Reddit review threads and stuff like that, then they just are screwed, right? And so I think it's a problem for smaller outlets who need it. That said, I also think small outlets do not have any incentive whatsoever to give negative reviews for clicks, because there's an offset to that, which is if you're a small outlet, a publisher can decide to not give you codes in the future. And so sometimes my experience has been the opposite, where there's been pressure at indie outlets to give positive reviews because they don't want to screw the relationship, especially with certain publishers that have been shown to be vindictive. I'm not saying that influences scores at smaller outlets, but I'm saying there's that pressure there where anytime a reviewer is saying, hey, I don't really like this game, I'm gonna have to write a bad review, leadership at that team might gather around and go, okay, how are we going to damage control? How are we going to save the relationship with the publisher? Because this is going to hurt. So they'll have those sorts of conversations. I don't have to deal with either of those problems at IGN. It doesn't matter when I publish my review, and it doesn't matter what I say. IGN's going to get the clicks. They pay me to give my opinion, and I do not care how that affects anything. That's the what I fought for. Like, I earned the right to be in this position to where I get to do that now, because it's not always, you don't always have that freedom. But I think people point at like one Jimquisition review, which right now I'm looking at this list. It's the only red review I see. The second highest score is in the 50s, which is technically mixed on theirs, right? It's the only negative score. And I think people point at that, and then they use it as fuel to point at every single outlet in the industry and say the whole system is corrupt. And that's just bullshit. It's just not true. The vast majority of reviewers are doing hard work to give their honest opinions, and people will take something as modest and not hyperbolic as a 7 out of 10 and compare that to a 0 out of 10 review where you said J.K. Rowling was the worst person in the world. Those are different things, very different. And so that's my problem with this conversation, is it quickly boils over into you can't trust your institutions, and I inherently don't believe that.
Right. So yeah, look, but you did bring up a couple of things, and I just want to quickly jump into the chat, guys. And there's no one being terribly disrespectful, but please do keep it respectful. Travis has given us his time, and he's given us his honest opinions.
Where's the chat? I want to see the disrespect. Where is it?
So please do, because we are going to delve into this, and I want to get deeper into it, because you did mention something that does create a bias throughout the industry. And now listen, this is the thing. This is the common misconception, and there's a lot of fanboys. And if you listen to the Twitter noise, you would think that those of us who, I guess you would say, I lean towards Xbox. That's pretty obvious, right? And some might characterize me as a quotation marks fanboy, but I'm actually extremely reasonable, and I do believe that there is a bias. But what I believe is that there is just an unconscious bias that happens organically. I love using that word. That happens organically when there is such a lead of one console over the other. Because you're just obviously going to have, they would do it. They had a great generation last generation. PS4 was definitely the place to be. And they had the best games, and it was the best system for quite a long time. And I think that sort of started to build a bias throughout the industry, just naturally, as people started to expect something from Xbox, and they started to expect other things from PlayStation. And I think that sort of bleeds in. And I'm not saying that it's IGN, or I'm not saying that it's seasoned gaming. I'm just saying, just as a whole, that's something that just naturally happens, and I think we do see it come through in reviews. Now, so whether
I disagree with that too. For me, like, everybody has preferences. That's just true, right? Like, if you are the type of person who likes story, like you're like Hogue, you guys watch Bitcast, you're like Richard Hogue. He likes story so much that he's willing to forgive like disastrous game design, which, I'm not in that camp, but I know people who are. If that's your slant, you're going to like games that focus on that, and maybe there's certain publishers or developers that create games that are closer to that. That's unavoidable. People have personal preferences. That's the end of that. However, you would never choose somebody who values story and doesn't really care about gameplay to play a Souls-like and review it, right? That's not happening at really any outlet that I know. You are picking the people who that game is marketed to, and then they're telling you, this game seems like it was made for people like me, and here are my problems with it. You're not assigning somebody who, it has a very, very big preference for offline games and loves single player story-based games and putting them on a multiplayer game. That's just not happening in the industry. And so I don't know of anyone in my professional experience who doesn't work for an outlet with Xbox or PlayStation in their name that is so, beholden to one platform or likes that platform so much that it would affect their opinion. Everybody has personal preference on the types of games that they like, but typically you try to match the player with the game. So I don't see that as a problem. Everybody's got bias. That's just how people work.
Okay,
Like, that's sort of
wasn't there a whole guy at
part.
IGN that had like was in the chat of a IGN stream, literally trashing Xbox? He was an employee of IGN at the time. I remember. And
Yeah,
he
so
was
that,
he was in there like literally trashing Xbox and their fans too.
I don't know what that is referencing or who you're talking about, but I can tell you that there's plenty of people working at IGN and major outlets who criticize publishers for things that they do. That does not mean that they have a slant against them. It just means that they're willing to call out big corporations when they screw up. I mean, during the Xbox One days, I feel like everybody was calling out Xbox and, you know, shaming them for the mistakes they made. During the PS3 days, they were doing the same thing with PlayStation. People do it with Nintendo all the time when they talk about infrastructure or hardware. It's okay for people to like criticize publishers. That's not a problem. The problem I have is that when people interpret that as, oh, well, they fail the loyalty test. They have to be this loyal to the brand or I don't trust their opinion. People work at media outlets are there for consumers. So they should be willing to call out anyone for any publisher if it's
but that's
not,
where I
if
would
it's
have to
not
give you
benefiting.
pushback, because this guy wasn't just criticizing a brand. He wasn't like, oh, Xbox should do this thing correct. They made this mistake. That wasn't what they were doing. They were literally just trashing Xbox and their gamers like you would expect a troll to do online. Literally.
I mean,
and I'll also
show me the
add
receipt.
something else, Travis, and I'll give you more of a like an actual example. So,
Please
Fallout
do.
4 got 9.5 on IGN. Skyrim got 9.5 on IGN. You just said yourself before that it doesn't do anything different to most Bethesda games. I would argue that the creation engine 2 has pushed the game forward. It's less buggy, and you can really delve even deeper into this world because there are 1,000 planets. Why the differentiation in the actual score? I think that's where people might see a Xbox bias towards the score.
Sure. I think you really
Just-
have to be
just-
ignoring a lot of
just
the
before you go,
facts to
before you go,
come to
let me
that
just
conclusion. Yeah, go ahead.
add to that, because I did read Dan's review, and I know that one of your problems
Sure.
is that a lot of people didn't read the review, and
Sure.
some of the things that he pointed out within the review for Starfield, he pointed out as positives in Fallout 4. Now I know that the game industry has moved forward, and gaming has moved forward, and
Sure.
and systems move forward as well, but not that drastically, and they're very, very similar. And so that does
sounds like an extremely subjective statement,
possibly.
doesn't it?
Possibly.
Yeah, it is. It is subjective. So yeah, I mean that's the point. Like, Dan reviewed Fallout 4 and he loved that game, which is why he reviewed Starfield, because he figured this game's made for me. I love Bethesda RPGs. I love science fiction. Space travel is my jam. I review every single spaceship combat game at the website because I'm the spaceship combat guy. And he went in expecting that he was going to like it, and he did like it. For the record, he gave a 7 out of 10. That's good at IGN. We don't, that's not just a given that 7 out of 10 is the lowest we give or whatever. I gave a 2 out of 10 last month. But he liked it, but he just had problems with it. And the games take place in different times, and the time that we are right now in the industry is very different. Fallout 4 is the time that game came out, and if games and brands refuse to evolve, that is a legit criticism. If somebody came out with Dark Souls and you gave it a 10 out of 10, and then they made 10 more games that were identical to Dark Souls, by the 10th one, you would be like, okay, this is kind of getting old. This is doesn't have the same magic. That's a legit criticism. We criticize Madden for doing that, right?
I'm gonna have to push back on you again, because Dark Souls games are very consistently the same. Even Elden Ring is very similar.
Don't say Elden Ring.
Oh,
don't do it. Don't do it.
Even Elden Ring even Elden Ring at its core is very similar to Dark Souls. There are differences. It's easier in some ways, but it's very similar. And I've played all of them. Yes, it is. I've beat them. So my thing is this. Now I get what you're saying, Trav. But my thing is this though. When you say that, and this is the problem I had with Dan. And I want to ask you about that too. I'll ask you after I say this, but
go for it.
My thing, what I had an issue with him is not, and you're right, a 7 is allegedly good, but in the atmosphere that we're in, right? I get it, right? I get it, but we know that that's not what it means to the fans and to the fan base. And you might say, well, that's their problem. Okay, cool. But I think Dan knows that too. And my thing is this as well. When he spoke in that space, he had a space for it, him and IGN, and I forgot who else hosted it with him. That man had so many superlatives for Starfield. I was confused as if I was listening to the person who gave that review. He had so many superlatives, even when he talked on Unlocked with Ryan McCaffrey and team, that I'm like, wait a minute. Then how did you come to what you're saying versus what you're saying? He said so many contradictory things about what he said versus his review. It made no logical sense that he came to the conclusion he came to. And that's the problem so many are having with him. Outside of where they feel like he has a bias against Xbox, and I felt that too off past things he said. But I'm going to base it off of what he said and versus what he gave it. He even said something along the lines of, I gave it an 8 originally, but read my review and took it to a 7. What?
Yeah.
I don't get that. To me, doesn't make sense. Like if I play a game, I don't go back to my words. Like,
do you write reviews?
I've written one before, but nothing anything professional. But like I know how I'm a gamer though. I've been gaming for what 30 plus years, 40 years, right?
I'm not calling into question your credentials. I believe you're a gamer. You're on an Xbox show. Obviously, you game. No, what I'm saying is sometimes when you go in and you think, yeah, in my head, I'm going to start writing this review. It feels like an 8 to me. And then you write down the actual review. Thousands of words go by, presumably hours, where you're putting it all in. And then you sit back, you read your review, and you absorb it. And you go, you know what? This actually reads like a different game. And that's when you evaluate and reflect. And that's a normal part of reviewing, is sometimes you write it down and sometimes you'll read it and you'll go, you know what? Actually, this is harsher than I feel. And you'll change some of the language. And other times you go, you know what? This is actually how I feel. And you'll adjust the score. I think that's totally fair. It's part of every reviewer deals with that. There's no reviewer out there who writes the review and they're like, yep, nailed it. That's a 9 out of 10.
I get it.
It reads like a 9 out of 10. That's,
and especially perfection. You're probably a perfectionist yourself. You probably go over your stuff really over like what you're saying, and you do your voiceovers and all that for your review. I'm sure
my editor goes over it for me. I don't.
Oh well, there you go. Well, I was going to give you some credit. but
no, of course I agree. Yeah.
But my thing is, even if that's the case, and I can acknowledge that, I think though, if you had the superlatives that if you heard what he was saying, and how he felt, and how he kept going back, and on his second playthrough, how do you? I've never played a game that was a 7 out of 10 where I'm like, I'm going my third playthrough now. Yay! I can't wait to jump. I don't think that doesn't correlate to the score to me. Like I look at a Greg Miller, for instance. He said he was at a 3 out of 5, right? Which is like a 7. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
he was like, I'm on my third playthrough. Then you start seeing this man throwing all types of superlatives on Twitter, like cuss words and such, because he's so excited about going through his 5th playthrough. And he adjusted and said, hey, this is a 4 out of 5, rather, I believe he said. And his thing was, and this is what I felt, and I've said this before, I don't think Starfield is the type of game where you can just play the first few hours or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a 7. I don't think that's how it works. Well, that's how he initially felt. That's initially what he said he felt. He said, and even other people have said that, like they initially felt it was a 7 at first, but after they continued playing, that it really grew on them and they understood. And this is why I think he ultimately felt. I just think that he just stuck with a 7.
No. It was the exact opposite. Honestly, I'll be real with you guys. The first couple days that we all had codes for Starfield, it felt kind of bad to all of us. Like I think
you played it too.
Oh yeah, I
played Travis,
I played 200 hours before the game came out, and I
Travis was in the space. So just so you know, Umbra, that was Travis in the space with Dan.
Oh, so you with him? Yeah. Okay.
I was the other guy in the space talking about it, and I had superlatives to say. I think it's slightly better.
Rate it?
Well, I would rate it an 8 out of 10. That's what the conclusion.
Now that makes more sense to me. That's
But that's fine.
That 1 point makes that much of a difference. It really is. But I think it does.
Okay, but here's the thing. That's okay that you agree with me more than them. Then you should probably read my reviews and maybe think, okay, well, I don't agree with Dan as much. That's not a reason to call into question his motivation or to say that he hates Xbox, which by the way is just bullshit. Like I know Dan and you guys don't. He's a PC fanboy and he doesn't care really at all about Xbox or PlayStation unless they have good games. That's how he feels about it, honestly.
I don't think he hates Xbox, and I even said that on one of his tweets. I just pointed out I don't understand how he said what he said in that space and in other places versus what his score was.
There's a few things at play here. When you were talking about a game on social media, sometimes you don't want to be overly critical because it makes you seem like you are just throwing toxicity out into the internet. That belongs in a review. It doesn't necessarily belong in your tweets, because that doesn't really help anybody, right? To just like complain on Twitter. I do the same thing. I try to keep all my tweets positive, even when it's a game I really didn't like. But if people want to see my negativity, I'll keep it to the review, where that's the space it's designed for. And so on the Twitter Spaces, that was planned by our social team far in advance. A lot of people are saying it was damage control for the review. It was not. It was planned way before we knew what the score was going to be. And the entire purpose was, it'll be nice for us to just talk about all of our experiences with the game so far and talk about the review and kind of what it does well and what doesn't do well. But the goal wasn't to just go on Spaces and like trash the game. And it also, it was a 7 out of 10, right? So it wasn't even a bad review. It was a good review. 7 on IGN means good. And so the purpose of that conversation was to give context, maybe talk a little bit about the criticisms, but mostly you want to keep it positive. And if they want to see the negativity, they can go to the review. And so I don't think it's fair to compare comments on a podcast or comments on Twitter and say, oh, well, he clearly liked the game more, the review is a lie. The review is the whole truth, right? The fluffy version is what you say on social media to not appear like you're just being a dick, because nobody wants that, right? That doesn't help anybody on social media to just throw up a bunch of toxicity. If you don't like the game, give it a low score, keep that to your review, promote your review online, but you don't have to like tag the developers and be like, you guys didn't make a good game. That seems really like overly negative to me. So that would be my take on maybe what you guys are reading into. But I really do think people are reading into it a lot too much, actually. A lot too much. I mean, Dan is a good guy. He taught me practically everything I know about writing game reviews. I have never seen anything from him that implied that he would have a bias of it. I know him personally. I know he doesn't have a bias. And I think people are taking stuff like him being Kratos for Halloween one year and going, oh, he's a PlayStation fanboy. It's insane stuff, man. Really. It's pretty out there. And I think you have to be ignoring
social
a lot
media
of
world we
context
live
to
in,
believe
Travis. And I get
I
that
know,
he's your
it
friend,
is.
and you're trying to,
moment.
and people question his integrity, and that can hurt, especially when you know the guy personally. But Holly, you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah. Hi, Travis. Hello. I'm just gonna bring it down for a second. Cool.
Sure.
Thanks for being here, really. And I don't want you
Thanks
to
for the
feel
invite.
like you're the representative for all of IGN. Not at all.
Yeah, I don't think
But
they would agree to that either.
yeah, I would definitely not sign up for that for my job. I don't blame you. I just wanted to quick turn back to Ains really fast because I just wanted to tell you I'm very interested in kind of watching your panel discussion, because I think everything you told us about your review process, I really like that. Like, that seems to be maybe not every game appropriate, right? But in this scenario, it seems that obviously Starfield's a huge game, whether you love it, hate it, whatever the case may be, it's fine. But there's a huge conversation around it on the whole.
Yeah.
And there's a massive amount of content to not only run through, but absorb. And to me, Starfield is kind of one of those games where you feel about it. It's kind of like drinking, right? Like, when you have it, it's great, or it's horrible, either way. And then, 2 hours into it, you feel a little differently. The next morning, you may feel very differently about, all the drinks you had the night before, right? But I think Starfield is one of those things where your opinion on it, even after you've set it down, may mature in one way
Yep.
or another, right? Given some time and given some thought and retrospect. Like we were talking about in the green room, Elden Ring is one of those that just, sat with me. I would think about it. I would think about how to go back and try to fight this boss, or what I needed to do the next time I sat down.
How did you find your way there without a quest log, though? Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Stop it. Damn it, Riskit.
It's a masterpiece. But anyway, and so I guess this question, and Ains, I'm really interested to see what you do with it, with that. But then also just kind of pivoting to Travis and just holistically, like, with obviously most games don't necessarily need this level of
scrutiny,
vitriol or whatever, right? Like, yes. And even this level of time investment, right? Because like we've all talked about, everybody gets different things in this game, and some things mean more to certain people than others. And certainly Bethesda games are not for everyone either, right? Just like Dark Souls and all those. But is there ever a thought with a large game like this that either multiple people do an independent review and just post their own opinion and score and, just valuation of the game on the whole and say, Travis did this review and then Ryan posted one that was this and then maybe Bella posted this, whoever, like you give 3 people, right? Because we all, of course, interact with IGN differently, right? Like some people watch Max most or, like whoever, right? So I don't know if internally that's ever been kind of a thought because maybe that does, and not even necessarily, average the scores, but just give it if you align more with this person, maybe this is the review you should watch, or this person, this is what you should watch.
Go ahead, Ains.
Sorry, Travis. I was just going to say, what's funny is we've already been talking about this single review for an hour. And you see why Travis and I easily talked for 2.5 hours about the review process because there's so many different aspects that you can talk about.
One. We might be.
We could. We probably should. But Travis, what Holly was kind of touching on at the beginning, and I, I'm sure the audience would like to hear your thoughts coming from an IGN perspective, not obviously, as Holly said, representing IGN. But one of the things that I brought up on Bigcast too, right, is Starfield being the type of game it is, where it is not only vast in scope, right, but it is a very different experience, especially for dozens of hours potentially between one player to another. And I know we've talked offline a lot about this, but as I said on Sunday, like my perspective is it's almost a tough review when you look at it that way because there probably is a case to be made, and I'm not challenging anyone's review because a singular opinion is a singular opinion. But there's definitely a case to be made to kind of do not a panel review, but a panel discussion on, your experiences in Starfield because they can be so vastly different. And I do feel there is some weight to the discussion around like a 5-hour narrative-driven linear game that is complete story, right? As I said this before you hopped on, Travis, is the same experience for me. It may hit me differently, but the experience is the same as it would be for someone else. Whereas in Starfield, right, there's so many different things that you can go and do and spend time on that one person to the next may have different experiences. And I know on the SG side, we're even talking in our Discord, in our editor chat, around all the different things we're doing. And we're having long conversations around, wow, you saw what? I didn't see that. You saw this. I saw this. And I think that that's going to just create a vast array of opinions on this game that may be a little more broad than some other games in comparison.
Yeah. I do think a lot of games are like that they have potential for people to come at it from different angles, right?
I think if games have gotten bigger, that's certainly more true too, right?
Yeah, certainly. And to be clear, like, we had probably 30 copies at IGN US, and so we were all playing and talking every single day, like late into the night, about our different experiences. So I think a lot of that came through to Dan, and he was very aware that, like, there's lots of different things in here. I think it was more the fundamentals, some of the stuff that didn't work for him, like, and I share some of those criticisms with him, like the encumbrance situation and the procedurally generated planets and some of the stuff. I have quibbles with it. I still think it's a great game, but yeah, the panel thing is interesting. I have no problem with that model. If anybody wants to try that model, I wouldn't say like, oh, well, that's not as good as IGN's methodology or whatever. Like, I think that's totally fine. The problem with it is mostly logistical, right? Getting 4 people to play through the entire game, which is a requirement at IGN. You at least have to roll credits on the game and spend a significant amount of time, basically as much time as you can, doing all of the secondary.
Interesting you use that number, but yep. Please continue.
What's that?
So it's interesting that you use that number because it's going to lead into my next, I guess, not question but thought. And you may already know what my thoughts on it.
Having a bunch of people play it and complete the game is tough. And then on top of that, there's just a lot that goes into an IGN review. There's multiple people that go in and read the review and give feedback. You iterate on it. After you're done with the written version, you have to turn it into a script. Then you have to make sure that somebody captures all the footage you need for the script so that you can match what's being said with what's being shown on screen. And then that person has to record VO. And then you have to give it to a team of editors so they can edit the video, and then it gets queued up and you get art made for it and all that stuff. There's just a lot that goes into it, man. Like I just write it, I do VO, and I let it go. I also do capture for the footage, but yeah, like a lot of it is just done by other people, and repeating that process 4 times for one game is kind of a lot to take on. And then even if you did succeed at that, then you've got a little bit of confusion where people aren't, if reviews are completely different, then how helpful is it to the user? I don't know. But what you're saying kind of already exists at IGN, which is that we have different branches internationally and they all write their own reviews. So on the day the Starfield embargo lifted, if you wanted a more positive review of Starfield from IGN, you had 3 that were more positive. I think we had a 9 and 2 10s.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm working on my Spanish, but I'm not quite there yet. So it would be tough for me to read that.
They've translated. I translated the IGN Japan one, and I was like, oh yeah, I can understand this.
Yeah, look,
just to be clear, I'm not looking for somebody to just give me a better score. I don't care. Like whatever score somebody has, I respect that that's their opinion. Totally fine. Now I may disagree with some of the things that are in it, but as long as it's based completely on the game and the merits that they loved or hated in it, it's fair. It doesn't mean it represents my opinion, right? And so I don't always use that as the
correct way to have it. I really appreciate that, because that's exactly right. Like, it's their opinion. You can take it, you can disagree with it. My problem is really with the people who try to make excuses around.
Yeah, no, so
there's no reason to attack somebody
say that their opinion doesn't count or in some way.
I do want to jump to your objective conversation, because I did listen. I was there in Bitcast. I was listening. It was pretty late for me. You guys kept me up like really late because the conversation was just so interesting. I couldn't go to sleep until I'd finished listening to you guys. But you have an issue with objective and subjective and the way that
that's what we do every Sunday, by the way.
Yeah, that's the gaming way. That's right.
You have an interesting view on. Well, not really. I think I would say you have the correct view on subjective and objective and how reviews can be, I guess, thought of or processed. However, what I did want to caveat what you said on Bitcast, which is that every review is subjective and there's no way to be objective. I don't entirely believe that that's true. I think, and then maybe if you want to switch the word out from objective to a review done with integrity, if you want to do that. And I just don't believe that throughout the industry, and I'm definitely not saying IGN. And IGN has a process, and they're a professional, they're a business, and there's you have to adhere to standards, and so I do believe that. And again, to the chat, I'll say, guys, please keep it respectful. I saw some stuff in there I didn't really appreciate, and there is a super chat I am going to read. I didn't appreciate though. But you can approach a review from a fresh perspective, as fresh as you can get it. You can sort of you can objectively step back and look at things. You can say, I don't like this, but is this bad? Objectively. I don't like this, but is it bad? Objectively. Like, I don't really like the Mona Lisa, like subjectively, I think it's just a shitty painting, but like objectively, it's
then give it a shitty score. No, I'm serious. Then give it a shitty score. Here's the problem with, first of all, I have a huge problem with the way you used objective right there. You used the word objective right before you used the word bad. Do you realize how different those words are? The word bad is different for every person. It has completely different meaning. There's no
I understand
definition.
That
is a 100% subjective word. And so objectively bad does not exist.
Okay.
Objectively bad is not a thing. And so therefore, if you don't like a game, even if you agree it does all the things it's supposed to do well, but you don't have fun playing it, you should just write the negative review. That's how I feel about it. That said, if you feel that way about a game, like it does a lot of things that you know there's an audience for, like if you don't like Souls-likes and you're playing a Elden Ring and it just isn't clicking with you, you should not be on that review. And so that's where I have this isn't a case of that. I can't think of any case at a major outlet, especially IGN, which is the one I know best, where somebody was on a review and they just shouldn't have been because the game wasn't for them. And that's not what's happening here with Starfield. And so I would say, if you don't like the Mona Lisa, maybe you should think, maybe I shouldn't be reviewing paintings. But if you're going to review the painting, you can't you can't review it from the perspective of somebody else. Whose opinion are you writing it for? Hey, I don't like this game, but I think you will, and so here's my recommendation, even though I didn't like it. Like,
yeah, and I guess
you cannot. That just doesn't
but you
make any
can.
sense.
You can sort of go, hey, this game does what it sets out to do, and it does it well, but I don't like it.
I just think that review lacks courage and conviction, and you shouldn't write that review.
Well, I don't think so.
I would never.
I disagree.
I would never
I have
write
written
the review
reviews. I have written reviews, and a couple.
But have you ever written the review from a perspective of somebody else?
No.
That's insane to me. Yeah, so don't do that. Don't. Literally, if you don't like the Mona Lisa and you're committed to writing a review about it for whatever reason, say that you don't like the painting or that the painting is bad. That's fine, as long as you can justify why you believe that and point to specific things you don't like. Then I'm cool with you.
She's just not a good-looking girl. That's my main problem.
There you go. She's not a good-looking girl, and for me, for a painting to be good, art is about beauty, and I don't find any beauty in this. If you justify that and you write the review, I'll read it and I'll go, well, I disagree with that. I think the Mona Lisa is great, but I get where this guy's coming from, and I'll move on with my day. And I probably won't read more painting reviews from you. That's fine. But I would just say there is no alternative to writing how you feel about a game if you are reviewing it. They're paying you for your opinion, not somebody else's opinion. And so if you don't feel strongly enough about the game to say how you feel and put a score on it and own that, you have no business writing reviews. None.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I always feel strongly about my opinions. And I think
good. You should. And then I will have no problem with you. As long as you're convicted, I won't have any problem with
convicted of what? I have been convicted a few times. But look, we do have to jump to a couple of, and we're in Australia, so all of us are criminals, at some point. But look,
that's true. The penal state.
I do have to get to these super chats, and we do have to move on because we don't want to hammer reviews for another hour. Because that's just
I do.
I could have this conversation all day because I there's some things you said there that I do disagree with, but I'd love to get into the meat of them. But we've already done an hour on this, and we definitely need to move forward to the next topic, which is sort of how we're feeling about Starfield. But before we do, guys, please hit the like button. If you're just joining us, we go live at 8 p.m. EST every Friday. If you're in Australia, that's 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And if you're in the West, like me, it's 8 a.m. We've got a super chat here from Enigmatic Dreams at $2, and I think you have sort of gone back and forth with him in the chat. Travis, and he says IGN is biased as hell and they are trash. Look, that's
I'm glad you're laughing.
Way to keep it respectful, guys.
That's
I love that you guys have to read these. Like, you can't just look at it and go, "This is stupid." You have to read it out loud.
I do. I mean, if they pay, you got to read it. But look, Enigmatic, I would say to you, that's an objective opinion. No, I'm just winding up, Travis. That's a subjective opinion. You can have that. I wouldn't say IGN's trash. I'd say IGN is a big conglomerate and it does what it needs to do and it does it well for the most part. But I do think that bias bleeds into the media. I've just seen it too many times for me to not think that. I've seen too many things online in social media. I mean, we've seen people like for clicks, say Metro would do that. I don't think IGN does things for clicks, but we've seen people who have worked for the bigger companies, not just IGN, come out and say things that are extremely harsh, not fair, and not criticisms. They're just attacks on Xbox and other outlets as well. We see that with the review, I won't say Xbox Era, but it's the only one I can think of with Xbox in the name. I wouldn't go and read a review from Xbox Era. No offense to Jesse, I think he's a great guy, but because it's got Xbox in the name, I know I'm getting an Xbox sort of agnostic sort of view, and that's not what I want. I don't like to live in an echo chamber, and I don't recommend.
If I can respond to that,
I don't recommend reading those reviews. Sorry,
if I could respond,
I'll go for it. Yeah,
I say I will defend to the death your right to think IGN is a trash outlet, but I would like in turn for you to defend IGN, the right of our writers to state their opinions that you disagree with without questioning, who they are as a person or their ethics or anything like that. It's okay to disagree. And that's my whole point with all this. And that's why I wanted to come on the show and talk about it, because I knew it was going to be a bunch of people telling me that I'm a paid shill snowflake beta cuck. yeah, I just want there to be a little bit more moderation, and I don't think a 7 out of 10 is a particularly, you know, I mean, I don't think that's a crazy score to give Starfield. I could see how somebody got there. I'm at an 8, and so that's all I want to say. And in terms of the bias thing, there's a difference between somebody posting something on Twitter that they personally feel and that affecting their coverage. Most people who work for IGN who you see on Twitter who are popular don't write reviews. Destin Legary, big Xbox guy, he posts a lot of really explosive stuff. He doesn't write reviews. He hasn't written reviews in years. So, and even if he did write reviews, he can post things that he's feeling or thinking or just trying to make a joke that maybe didn't land. That doesn't mean that the entire machine is corrupt. I can tell you that we have people on the staff at IGN that love PlayStation and are on a PlayStation podcast, which I'm going to be on next Tuesday, if you're curious, if you're interested, and on Wednesday, actually. And then we also have people who love Xbox, like Destin Legary and Ryan McCaffrey, who bleed green. And I think it's okay for both of those personalities to work at an outlet, because if you know Ryan McCaffrey, you know he covers the industry fairly. He puts his Xbox love aside and he criticizes the hell out of them. And I think there is some merit to having those fans work at outlets, because fans are often the harshest critics.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it necessarily affects their coverage. And I don't think you should say, oh, well, this guy likes Xbox, so I can't trust him.
I would agree with that. I think that doesn't cover everyone, because I like Xbox, and I have been sometimes the guy, look, my panel even has been like, nah, man. And I'm like, yeah, like Xbox this is wrong. They shouldn't be doing this. Like, I don't agree with their early access. I think it's predatory. And I see why they do it from a business.
Me too.
Yeah, from a business.
We're on that together, Riskit.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
From a business perspective,
it's congratulated, Travis.
It's great.
For fronting up, mate. So
yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're not done there. Let's get these super chats. I don't want to hear about what people think of Starfield, because I woke up every hour on the hour last night dreaming about Starfield, and then when I woke up, I was thinking about what I was going to do in Starfield. So yeah, for me,
I love that feeling.
For me, it's like a 9. Alvin with the $5 super chat, he said, how much, if any, Starfield review criticism was due to the reviewers just come off BG3? Would things be different had BG3 not released? I doubt anyone would be reviewing, and I don't even think Travis needs to say this. Alvin, I don't think anyone's going to be reviewing BG3 and then Starfield back to back unless they're a creator. And I would say that's in the rarest circumstance. That's a big ask of anyone. And if you're at IGN, there's plenty of reviewers that can do the job. So I would imagine they would put one on BG3 and they would be putting one on Starfield. If that's just my imagining. If I'm wrong, Travis, you can correct me. He didn't.
You're probably right that it's not the same person who reviewed it, but that's not to say that he didn't play Baldur's Gate 3. I actually don't know the answer to that, but I maybe he did. But to answer the question, there's nothing wrong with games that recently came out affecting the way you feel about other ones. People try to say that has nothing to do with the game, and that's just not true. It does have a lot to do with the game, because games don't exist in a vacuum. If you play Dark Souls and then somebody came out with Steel Rising, right, which is a Souls-like game that I gave a 6 out of 10, if you don't know what I'm referring to, you can look at that game and go, look, this game came out a decade after Dark Souls, and it's worse than Dark Souls, and that is a legit criticism. You can compare games to one another, and new games are always pushing the industry forward, and therefore your expectations, and that's okay. Not only is it impossible to defend against, you can't pretend like no other video game exists and then review the game as if it's isolated. That's just not a thing.
However,
but I don't even think it's helpful.
I'll add something to that, though. Now, that is a direct comparison, because they're both in this soul style of fighting, right? And
Sure.
how you would go about it. It's kind of unfair to compare BG3, I would say, with how they do what they do versus Starfield, unless you're just talking about specific dialogue and such and things of that nature. If you're talking about maybe, it's a better RPG because it does RPG mechanics in this way better, okay, I can hear that argument. But they're not a direct comparison. So that's the problem I would have with what you said there. As far as what you said before on the whole bias thing, I think the bias thing goes both ways. I think us as the fans and the audience outside of a corporation, I think we will see things away, and you all working in it will see things away. And what I mean by that is I think you're a fair guy from what I can hear. You sound level-headed. I'm sure you are. You seem like a good guy to me. I'm not saying it to be patronizing. But I think bias works both ways. And I think maybe you're blindsided to a lot of people who are there at IGN who do have negatives against Xbox. And I say that only because I've seen past reviews and articles and things of that nature from people, not reviews, I don't want to say that, but articles and headlines. And you see it in general, not just IGN. I'm talking about across the spectrum. There is a much harsher tone toward Xbox than there is toward PlayStation, than there is toward Nintendo. PlayStation, for instance, had that price hike to their PS Plus. You didn't see hardly a thing about that being as hyped up as Xbox having the dollar raise, for instance, for Game Pass. So it's a consistent thing. This happens over the years consistently. So that's where I would say I think maybe you might have the blinders on there a bit. Not saying that you're wrong on Dan or anything like that. I'm sure he has what you said, and you know him more than we would. So I'm not doubting you there. I'm just saying I think that goes both ways.
Well, we wrote an article about the PlayStation price increase. I think maybe the question about your perception that it wasn't promoted as heavily or what have you might be influenced by your particular feed. If it came up in your feed, it was posted on social. I saw it the same way I saw Xbox. So maybe there's some of that. I'm not really sure. But the important thing for me is that I work on the team and I know these people. And so, yeah, maybe I want them to be successful. But I'm not even on the team. I'm a contributor. I have a guest profile on their Slack account.
Let's change that, Trav. Let's change that.
No, it's by choice. They've offered me a job, but I prefer to be contracted because it allows me. Yeah, you get paid by how much work you do, and that's how I like to roll. I think that just the fact that I have a little bit more knowledge and I work with these guys and I see them talking every day, and that's how I can confidently say that there is no bias. People have preferences. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that as an organization, our goal is to cover everything. It's more people reading our stuff. It's more people getting informed. That's our goal. As for the comparison from Baldur's Gate 3 to Starfield, that is a completely subjective kind of thing to say that they're not similar games. I think they're more similar. People have been comparing No Man's Sky to Starfield. To me, No Man's Sky is a survival game with very, very few RPG mechanics on it, and Baldur's Gate 3 is a hardcore open world RPG in the same way that Starfield is. So I actually think they're closer than some of the other comparisons out there. I don't have a problem with you disagreeing with that, though. I mean, you can think, yeah, it's not really a fair comparison because it's smaller in scope or whatever. I think it is. I think Baldur's Gate does specific RPG things that are very much better on Baldur's Gate 3, like your decision making and how your decisions actually impact the story and stuff like that. But, that doesn't mean they both can't be good, guys. It just means that I think Baldur's Gate specifically came out at a really great time where it got to shine. And maybe people who Starfield isn't immediately clicking with them as much, they are looking at the two and thinking, that Starfield isn't as good. But that's not my feeling.
I would also add to that. I would also add to that, Trav, that if Starfield was on PlayStation, I don't think it would have got as harsh a review either, and not just from you all. I think in general, I think it would have been better received. So I do believe that
it got an 88. What do you want? You think it deserves higher than an 88?
I thought it deserved higher than an 88. Yes, and it's an 88 on OpenCritic, by the way. It's on 85 now on Meta, but because of a lot of review bombing, what I consider review bombing, such as a Jimquisition person.
Well, I think that frankly, I was expecting the score to go down, and I think it will continue to. And I don't think that's review bombing. I think it's the fact that Bethesda very explicitly did not give codes to vast swaths of the media industry, including pretty much any outlets in Europe. And I think a lot of those people are catching up, and they have more knowledge because they're not playing the game before it's out, right? They have access to wikis and YouTube channels and guides, and so I think they're probably getting more information and finding stuff that doesn't work for them and seeing bugs and that sort of stuff. So I don't really know what it is, but if you try to control positive reviews in the early days by giving codes to outlets that are going to give positive reviews, which seems like it happened a little bit with this game based on the number of Xbox specific outlets versus non that got codes, obviously when other people get their hands on the code on the game, it's going to go down a little bit. So I think that was probably expected. But they did a hell of a job making the first impression strong, right? Like 88, the first week is, I mean, that's a huge win. So I don't know, man. I think we can differ in this. I think 88 is probably right on the money, or even a little higher than I would have come out on it. But
I think it's
me.
it's kind of minuscule when you go to 88, and I would say a 90, right? So I'm not mad at that. So I agree with you.
You think it's a 9 out of 10?
I think it's a 9 out of 10. So that's why I say
there
at
you go.
88,
Yeah.
I agree. Like if that's
Okay.
that's minuscule.
we'll
85,
round up.
however, is a little bit of a difference for me because I feel like it's like you said, it's probably going to go lower because of people probably like, oh well, this didn't click with me either. I don't know. So we'll see how it plays out, like you said, and I guess for people getting it now. But I don't know. I feel like the game has been unfairly treated, and I just think that if it had been more widely available, like previously, I think people have held that against it. I think the bias has been against Xbox because they purchased a lot of these studios and publishers.
I thought that way, Umbra, too, to be honest. And in the course of me back and forthing with, the fanboys, I like to have a laugh at their expense. And being told that Starfield was a terrible game, that 88 is a terrible score, and it's trash. I went and had a look at a lot of the PlayStation reviews and the top. I believe I was looking for the top completion rates, and in that I found the Metacritic scores for a bunch of the games, and most of PlayStation's biggest hits are really sitting in the 80s as well. I think Horizon Forbidden West was 83. Ghost of Tsushima was 83. Horizon Forbidden West was 87. So maybe that look, I'm with you on the bias. It's there. I've seen it in the articles. I really do believe that's there, and we could go on about that all day, but I do want to move to the next topics before I do. Let's get to these super chats. Pyro Mad, the scoring system has been inflated over the last decade. No game is a 10. Yeah, I agree with that. 1 out of 3 is unplayable, broken. 4 out of 6 playable, okay, good. 7, 8, great, amazing. 9, must play. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And one thing that Dan said as well, Travis, as I'll add, he said it's a very good game. But he didn't give it a very good score. He gave it a good score. Enigmatic Dreams with the $5 super chat said first.
Good, not great.
Can I comment on that last super chat too?
Go on then. Yeah.
So Travis and I have discussed this. Well, we've discussed all these aspects before, but the key thing to keep in mind, and I don't know why this still happens, but people seem to think that 10 equates to a perfect quote game, and there's no such thing as a perfect game. And if you read the review scales at almost all sites, including SG all the way up to IGN, 10 does not mean perfect. They have different definitions, but it's not perfect. So if your review scale is 1 to 10, you need to use the whole scale. You can't just say our review scale is 1 to 10, but all games should be 1 to 9. We don't use 10 because there's no such thing as a perfect game. That doesn't make sense. Like,
all it does is slide your meter.
3.
It just slides it downwards. Like
Perfect.
Yeah, you use a scale, and obviously depending on what site you read, and as we've talked about the reviewers that you prefer to read, right, because you enjoy their content, you should know what that scale is, whether it's the outlet, the reviewer, what have you, of what they use, and you should associate to that. But just saying no game's a 10, that's a very outdated, in my opinion, kind of methodology, because people are thinking 10 is perfect, which is not.
IGN have 10 as masterpiece status. I would rate things as like Witcher 3 masterpiece, Elden Ring masterpiece,
exactly.
Breath of the Wild masterpiece.
Yeah.
Well, not Breath of the Wild, but
Oh, you don't like that, huh?
I wouldn't put Breath of the Wild as a 10 either, but the other ones I'm with you. Red Dead 2, I think deserves it.
What about Tears of the Kingdom? What did you all feel about that?
I would give that a 10. From what I've played, I have not beaten.
I haven't played it enough to comment.
Yeah.
I got to get on that soon.
Let me tell you 10 for 10. So I actually agree with the commenter on this that the scale has slid a little bit, but I think it's kind of slid in the opposite direction, where 1 through 7 is apparently terrible if the feedback from Dan's review is anything to be believed, and then 8 to 10 is acceptable and good and you should play it, and that's the entire review system. That review system is awful. It's unsustainable. And so when IGN says 7's good and people balk at that and go 7 is not a good score, I say to them, that sounds like a you problem, because 7 out of 10 by any reasonable metric should mean good, not great, right? And so on our scale, 7 means good, 8 means great. When Dan says very good, he's probably thinking 7.9, but on our scale, you always round down. If it's not great, it's good, right? And so that's how our system works. So that doesn't conflict with that. A 10 on ours is masterpiece, and the text for our rubric reads, simply put, this is our highest recommendation. There's no such thing as a truly perfect game, but those that earn a masterpiece label from IGN come as close as we could reasonably hope for. These are classics in the making that we hope and expect will influence game design for years to come as other developers learn from their shining examples. And they've got a few examples there: Grand Theft Auto 5, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Last of Us.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a fine definition. Because that's as high as you could get. It's gonna bring the industry forward. It's gonna set the example.
It moves the needle.
Future games to be made.
Is the comment,
I think
right?
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think
Trav,
that's awesome.
can you then explain why Death Loop got a 10 from IGN?
I didn't review that game, and I actually I don't know the review. Yeah. So look, we don't always agree. Like the one that Ains always points at is our reviewer Leanna, who is a super talented reviewer. She reviewed Baldur's Gate 3, but she also reviewed Pentiment. And she gave Pentiment a 10 out of 10 because she loves story-based games. She doesn't care a whit about gameplay, and that's her perspective. And if you've read her reviews, you know that that's her slant, and she talks about that in the review. And to her, that is a masterpiece because it's her ideal game. I wouldn't have given it a 10, right? I actually just finished it kind of recently, and to me, it's like maybe an 8. You know,
I gave it an 8 because I reviewed it.
I love the writing. Yeah, I love the writing, but it's not a 10 for me.
I gave it a 3.
Subjective and.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I
enjoyed it. I thought it was.
I love that game. Honestly.
Yeah, I had to read, and you know, if I
had to read,
if I wanted to read a book, you know, I would read a book. But
I really did want to move on, but this is the whole point. Reviews are subjective, and I know that we have discussed this like pretty much at length. Like that, there might be like a structure that you can have for reviews, but at the end of the day, you just go to the reviewers that you trust. I go to ACG and skill up myself. I go to IGN as well, just because I've been doing it for 15 years now. I think the discourse and the messaging at the bottom of articles and the commenting has got a lot more toxic in recent years at IGN, something that I don't like. I also think that what they rate stuff, they've given things like maybe a point lower than maybe they did 5 years ago, so I think they're a little bit harsher, but I can understand why they did that. But hey, I mean, Starfield's out, guys. Let's start talking about that.
Yeah,
you all will never outlive too much water in Zelda as a review.
Okay, here I want to address that specifically.
I want to hear this.
If you have a problem with the phrase "too much water" as being a negative in a Pokemon game, you either A, have never played a Pokemon game before, or B, are just being mean. Because anybody who's played Pokemon knows exactly what too much water means and why it's bad. You telling me you like running into tentacles every 5 seconds and having to fight it, dude? Water in Pokemon sucks. So if you actually think that that's a bad comment, like, I just don't know what to say to you. Play a Pokemon game. Water sections
taken out of context. I think
it is
out of context.
Yeah,
that's why
it is. It's taken out of context, but it's an actual legit complaint. I've never met anybody who's a Pokemon fan who doesn't get that complaint. Like, it makes sense to me. So yeah,
I want to throw one last thing on it before we move on, because somebody sent me this when I was talking about where there has been bias in the media, or at least from some people that work at certain places, not IGN here specifically, but somebody pointed out that a guy named Jordan Mittler had at VGC called Xbox fans Nazis and Trump supporters.
Oh, I've had run-ins with Jordan. Yep, go on.
Yeah, so that was one of them. I've seen other things before too. Like I said, over time, I kind of put it out of mind, but you get the idea and the picture that there is, something they have against Xbox, whatever that may be, bias in some way. That's what I feel, but I don't know how prevalent that is at IGN. I just think that it is a industry-wide kind of thing.
I can tell you, I don't know this person, and I didn't know about this quote, but my experience with the industry, at least at the level that I'm at, is I've met no one like that. And hearing that person, I'm kind of glad I haven't met him, because that sounds like somebody I wouldn't want to hang out with.
Yeah, definitely. Look, we do need to move forward. We definitely do need to move forward. I've got to get to these super chats, and then I'll move. We'll move on to the next topic, which is more positive. Enigmatic Dreams again. Travis, please don't respond. This is first, Travis. No ill will towards you, but you can't tell me to ignore evidence. I can't be subjective when the reviewer isn't. Yeah.
I can tell you you don't have all the evidence. Move
Yes.
on.
Give Travis the right to reply, but 30 seconds,
Yeah.
Trav. You got to move
Well,
on.
I can tell you that I think I have more knowledge than you, and I think a lot of your evidence is pulled from cherry-picked tweets that are taken out of context and that maybe you don't know as much as you think you know. And I would just ask for a little bit of humility and, you know, a little deeper digging into that. But I think you probably don't have all. I know that you don't have all the facts, or at least as many facts as I do. And so I think that
it's hard.
Out of context.
It's hard to get those facts unless you work in the industry, and that's completely understandable. And things that I thought for before I started doing the podcast, and I met, you know, people like Ains, people like yourself, people, you know, Rand, you know, people like Todd Howard, like people that I've Jason Ronald, people that I've managed to meet, sit down and talk to. Things are a lot different, very different to what you think that they actually are.
Going out names, Risk. Nice, bro.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was just name dropping hard there, wasn't I? Yeah. Alvin.
Surprised you didn't say Kodo, somebody.
Well, Cody's. Alvin with the $5 super chat. He says, Travis, you're harsh but fair and consistent. I trust your reviews. Grade these out of 10. Sturm, Black Talon, and Merciless.
All right, here we go. Sturm is a 10 out of 10 hand cannon. One of the most in consistently good hand cannons in Destiny. Black Talon had its place, but I kind of think it's been touch or go. So I'm going to give that one an 8. And then what was the last one?
Black Talon and Merciless.
Merciless. Oh man, Merciless was so good when Destiny dropped, but I don't really think it's that good anymore. So I'm gonna say in its heyday it was like a 9, but probably now I'd give it a 7. It's good. I wouldn't call it great. These are Destiny questions, by the way, guys.
When it first came out.
Oh, when it came out, it was damn good, but I just think it's fallen so far now.
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to happen with updates, DLCs, and all that sort of stuff. Moving on to the next topic, and this is not a topic that I just want to call out a couple of things. Then I want to get people's thoughts on Starfield, and that's probably all we're going to end up having time for. But so if you guys haven't noticed, Starfield hit a 6 million player base. I think second day after launch. Also remember that obviously early access. I failed to mention that in my tweet, and that was on purpose because I knew people would get upset about that. But 6 million players is absolutely fantastic. It is a great game. It is absolutely fantastic. I wouldn't be dreaming and then waking up and thinking about what I'm going to do next in a game. I don't think I've ever done that before. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. And Xbox sales have jumped by 1,000%. So this game is definitely doing what it needed to do, which I think is sort of shift the. And when you talk about moving the needle, I think whether it moves the needle for the industry, it's moving the needle for Xbox, and it needed to do that. And Xbox really did need that because when I say we, I think of it as a we, but Xbox has really had a very rough last generation and a bit of a bumpy start to this generation. And I think if they've moved the needle with this and shifted the narrative slightly, and we start moving into the back end of this generation with some sort of cadence, that sits around, Metascore doesn't matter, but like I'm just going to use Metascore as a reference or OpenCritic as a reference. It sits around the 7 mark to 8 mark. And they get a couple of bangers in there as well. I think Xbox is going to do what it's hoping to, and what we all hope for, which is just good games at a cadence, man. That's all we want. Give me the games. Now, I want to jump to the Starfield conversation. Again, we're going back to it, but Blue, we haven't heard much from you, and I know that you've played a shit ton of this game. I know that you're a Fallout 76 fan now. You weren't upon release, but now you are. So, Blue, I wanted to ask you, knowing your love for Fallout 76, Fallout 76 is a very, very different game to the game we got at launch, to the game that cost Skill Up his review code. It is a very, very different game, and it is good. Really? I have checked this game out. It is good. It's not for me. I am not a Bethesda fan. I don't like Bethesda games. I fucking love Starfield. And Blue, you are a Bethesda fan. What do you think of Starfield? How do you think it sits in the Bethesda stable? Where is it for you?
Oh yeah, Bethesda junkie. I love their games. I just and frankly, all of the studios under Bethesda, Arcane is my favorite out of all studios everywhere. But I am a big Fallout fan, probably a little bit more than Elder Scrolls, but I put my fair share of time into those as well. But I did play 76 when it dropped because I was so excited because I really wanted some more Fallout, and I very quickly dropped it like a hot rock because it was a hot mess. It was bad. It's real bad. And then I tried again like a year later. Tried to get a friend because it was not a single player friendly game. Still didn't hit. And then in the last like 4 months or so, I fired it up and I play it every single day now. It is so good now. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff to do in it. So, and I don't know. It's great. And anyway, so besides doing my little daily run that I do in Fallout 76, I actually had a few days off this week. So I'm probably 50, 60 hours into Starfield, and I feel like I might have seen 7% of the game. That's how it feels anyway. And I am enjoying it very much. It's very different. I mean, at its bones, it just feels like a Bethesda game. So if you don't like Bethesda games, you're probably not going to like it, right? Totally fair. But I see the points that a lot of people have mainly kind of brought up consistently from some of the complaints, like the inventory system and the maps. And I see that. Yeah, exactly. and this is probably the first game in a good 5 years where I've just put down the controller, went into my office, and grabbed a notepad and a piece of and a pen and sat down and been like, I need to take notes because I don't remember where I put this outpost. I don't remember what like, or I would. The other thing is I like to like randomly drop into a planet and just see what's there. And I came across the coolest thing, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But I had a limited time event that I had to go do. So I thought, I'm never going to remember where this is ever. Right. So that was like the last straw. Like, okay, I got to get a notepad and a pen and just start making notes on what to go back to or where my outposts are, or, just other, or even like minerals where I want to come back and put another outpost at some other time when I have the right perk card for it. So I'm not normally like in Fallout. I had nothing to do in Fallout 4. I hated the base building stuff. I had no love for it. I did the bare minimum and moved on with my life. But Fallout 76 has given me a great appreciation for base building. It's a lot of fun. And I am a plushie junkie. So for every plushie I found in Starfield, I've been picking it up and keeping it in my locker, the captain's locker.
Oh my god, my fiance is doing the same thing. She's putting them on the bed in the lodge.
Dude, I'm doing the same thing.
I don't want to put them on the bed because I heard somebody
actually,
lost
Ains?
theirs.
Yeah, look at my Twitter, dude. I posted a picture with all the plushies on my bed.
Yeah, I did the same thing, and I lost a whole bunch of my losses.
Oh, I saw that.
I lost 2 plushies.
Yeah, see,
I was pissed.
I saw that image, Ains, that you posted with the plushies.
How do you place them in spots? Because I can't figure out how to like
action
drop
button.
it. Go to inventory and just drop it.
No, you hold the action button, right? So you hold it and you can drag things.
Yes, you just hold it. You can drag it up and then use the triggers to rotate it. Yep.
I didn't know that. I was just dropping them on there.
Anyway, I was really, 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 really excited when I saw the first plushie and I could pick it up, and I was like, oh, that's it. This is my game. This is the game within the game, right? Finding them all. So, yeah, I've stolen. I was shocked at how easy it was for me to steal my first ship, and so I've kind of liked doing that a lot. That's fun,
Give in
right?
to your anger.
And the other thing, I took the Adoring Fan, and he's like my favorite character in the game.
Gross.
And I totally intend on annihilating him at the very end. Yes, of course it's gross because it's amazing, right? Like, it's a role-playing game, okay?
Yeah. You know what's funny is if you side with the Crimson Fleet, he keeps saying this line. He's like, I read these nasty rumors online about how you joined up. Don't worry, I've created 20 different social media accounts and I'm defending your honor.
Oh my God.
Everyone has to pick
Oh
that.
man,
Everyone.
Like,
It's very
Bethesda's,
I love that they added him to the game. By the way,
oh, their humor is
See, I hate compliments. If people compliment me, it makes me cringe. And that dude just, I've got him, and I've held a gun to his head at least 5 times. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but I am so close, so close.
The way
Sorry,
you
Blake.
hold your gun is quite unique.
I want,
He likes the dust on my shoulder, and he likes to wipe it
want
off
a
while I'm
fan in
sleeping.
real life. Everyone needs one of those guys in real life.
Definitely not.
I volunteer Pete.
So Blue, what's your score? So you, I think you're a couple of days in, right? I think you got 4 days in it. I was checking to see who's got the most. I've got the least out of all of us. But what's your?
Probably me. Well, I had some time off.
What's your score?
So honestly, for me personally, I'm in a 9 out of 10, but it's also because I have a lot of tolerance for inventory management due to Fallout 76 and other Bethesda titles, right? So it is just a fact of the game that I'm comfortable with it. And I totally understand how that becomes just a significant level of frustration for other people. And that's very valid. Totally don't take that away from anyone. But it doesn't really bother me because it's a Bethesda trope, right? Whether it should be there or not, that's another conversation. But that's what it is for me.
Mm-hmm.
I am 9 and a quarter. I like it. And there's problems, right? There's obviously problems. But again, right, like Ains said, no game is perfect, right? And a game that makes you think about it when you're not playing it, a game that ruminates in your head, or the game that you wind up, I can't wait to tell somebody about what happened at this moment, deserves a bigger conversation, right? Or more pause in your evaluation of it, just because obviously it's doing something that intrigues you.
Well
That's
said.
my thought.
Well said, Holly.
Umbra, so let's go to you and get. Actually, let's go to Pete. I haven't heard much from you today, Pete, and I'm curious as to
We should
what
keep
your
it that way. I think.
Pete's at the Astro Lounge in neon in his little dance leotard doing his thing. So you know what.
And I look damn good doing it, Ollie. Damn good doing it.
So
Take
what-
some photos.
So where are you sitting?
Oh, I
I
got
haven't
one.
played as much as I'd like. Right now, I'm sitting at an 8.5, so I'll get the negatives out of the way to start off with. The inventory management system is just annoying the hell out of me. I've got 2 levels into weightlifting at the moment. I'm going to level that up all the way. I like to pick up everything. I know I'm doing it to myself. I'm terrible when it comes to that, especially in RPGs. I think there's too much loading, way too many loading screens, and the UI needs a lot of work. That's the negatives out of the way. This game took me a little bit of time to get into, but after the second day, I think it just all fit into place for me. I ran into the deep cover mission where you're going, undercover against the Crimson Fleet. Amazing mission. I went and got a starship, another, I think it's called the Mantis mission, another amazing mission.
Nice, Mantis. That's great.
Great ship. Yeah. And so now I'm actually role-playing the game, so I'll come across a bounty and be Han Solo for a day, or, just go fly around space and find some fights to get into, just to I'm not great at the sim fighting, so I wanted to get better at it. Yeah, absolutely love it, Riskit. And I was a little bit unsure because I don't really like Fallout 4. I thought the shooting in that game left a lot to be desired. I was worried about the 30 frames, but yeah, the shooting feels great. I don't really notice the 30 frames too much. And the conversations that I have, just like with my adoring fan, or with Sarah, or with Barrett, are just great. I think they're done really well. The writing is fantastic. The score is amazing. How big the world is and the amount of things that you can do is just so open-ended. You can be a bounty hunter, or you can work for the Crimson Fleet and be a baddie, or the Freestar Galactic, or the Rangers in role play, being in the Wild West. I love that about this game. So I think Todd Howard said a while ago to find the fun in Bethesda games, and I think everybody can find something about this game that they love and live out that role-playing experience. And honestly, this show's gone for too long, and I want to get back to Starfield now.
All right, I'm going to take it to our last panel member, and then I'm going to go to our guests. Umbra, where are you sitting at? You already did give us the score, but what are your thoughts on the game so far?
Well, I have a bunch, but I'm going to keep it pretty short because I did talk a bunch and kind of sometimes over, Trav. I apologize, Trav.
That's part of the fun.
And I'll do it again. No, I'm joking. I'm playing. Seriously, I am at a 9. I struggle because I feel like it should get more in my head because I'm enjoying it that much. It's much like both of you I think you hit it on the head. And much like you said, Holly, it's like, I think of this game all the time. You all wouldn't know Ains and Trav, but I bought the ROG Ally, and I also play this away from home on it.
Nice.
Like, that's how entrenched I am into this world. And that's why I can't, when I hear something lower than at least an 8, it's like, it don't really register for me. I just think, and I think Holly made a great point where she pointed out that I think it deserves more discussion when the game you're thinking about all the time, no matter what you're doing, you want to get back to it. And this is actually this game. On my Mount Rushmore, I've talked about it before. I have Oblivion from Elder Scrolls Oblivion, from Bethesda on there. This actually is better than Oblivion. It's actually better than Skyrim. I think it's one of their best made games ever. I have had very little bug instances or anything like that. I know other people have had little funny happenings and such, but it's possibly, I think, their most polished game. The gunplay is solid. It's not Halo Infinite solid, but it's solid. And some people will probably be like, Halo, why would you say Halo? But I think Halo has great gunplay.
Best gun mechanics in the industry. Thank you, Umbra. Appreciate you.
So you get it. You get it. But it's great. It's solid, and it's especially their best when it comes to, if I have to do a best in class and gun handling and combat in the game, as far as Bethesda games go, this is their best right here, no doubt. As far as the main Bethesda, not machine games or something. Anyway, but the negatives, I would say, I think I get what Pete is saying on it, but much like Holly pointed out, you get past that whole inventory thing. At least I did really quick because I know how it works with Bethesda games. So that's nothing to me. And also I'll throw out there that I don't think that's enough to try to hold that against as a point against the game. I really don't, because it's a trope and a thing of Bethesda. I can see it being outdated and people feeling, oh, it's a little convoluted, because at first it kind of is until you learn it. And then when you learn it, it's second nature. Like, you can actually ship off your inventory to your ship, if you all didn't know that. As long as you're like, I think, within 750 yards or so or something. So there's a lot of ways to get around that. Also, you still can move. It's not like he slow you down. In past games, you would slow down to a crawl. You couldn't run and things of that nature. You can still do that on here. So there are ways around that minimizes that. Plus, I don't think people are being realistic. You know that you're carrying around gigantic ship parts and things of that nature, right? You're not carrying around like little paper and things like that. So it seems that way to you, but you have to look at it in a different sense. You have to look at it as a role play. I am carrying around heavy mechanical parts. Yes, that's going to weigh down on me. I shouldn't be able to run around in that. I don't care about, that it's a game though. Yeah, but you're trying to role play. So I think people overlook that aspect and judge it a little too harshly. Even I think the whole fast travel thing was a bit convoluted, but once you learn that, it becomes nothing. It's like, oh, I didn't know I could travel like that easily. It's fairly simple, I think. And I think if you play other Bethesda games, it doesn't really affect you negatively. And that's where I'm at with it. As far as the one thing I will say that I did not like, and I was listening to Gaz's podcast, and he had Gene Park on there, and Gene is loving the game. And Gene pointed out that something I noticed when you go into dog fights, which I do like, and are incredibly hard if you're on very hard, as we talked about in the green room.
Mm-hmm.
They're hard on normal.
Even normal can be tough.
Some of them,
yeah, some of them can be, especially if it's like 4 of them against you. But if they have this little bubble that you're kind of in outside of the world. And I was looking at your gameplay a minute ago, Risk, when you were playing Everspace, and I was like, I wish they would have done something more like that, where they had expanded it a bit out into space where you can really travel a bit around, not go necessarily to another system or anything, just more space where you could fight more things out there in the field, of asteroids you can dodge through and actually have actual things in space outside of just hailing somebody or somebody hailing you with cool little instances. things of that nature. Other than that, I would just say the other superlatives that I would throw out there: great voice acting in some instances. It has callbacks to favorites. I won't go into detail because it'll be too much. The missions that you can come across randomly sometimes are the best, and that's held true for Bethesda since I've been playing them. And a lot of these other missions where you get like these, I don't want to spoil anything. Never mind. I am 100 and probably 105 hours in now, and I have lacked sleep because I wanted to play this game. And I'm being honest, like I'm tired now, and I got the game on right now. Now I'm being professional, so you won't hear me clicking it, but it is that tough for me to pull myself away from this game, and that is not conjecture. I have ignored I halfway didn't do my podcast the other day because I wanted to play this game. Like that's how that's how this game has gripped me. So I'll just say I think it's a 9, and I'll leave it at a 9 out of 10. And yeah, love the game.
Absolutely.
One, right? 6 million players, 200. I think it's 2 million players got early access. So even though this game was coming to Game Pass, 2 million people paid that. Well, it was $53 in Australia to get early access to this game. I think that suggests a lot. Very, very good news, Rex.
Yeah, and that was a lot of those were Steam users. We know 250,000 of those at least were Steam users that paid full price for the games. But Ains, man, I wanted to get your opinion on this game. So
well, mine's real easy. Just go back and listen to Holly's. It's that simple. I'm like everything she was saying. I'm almost completely in line with. I have complaints about the game, which I think many people have discussed. Right, the lack of a local map is silly. Some of the annoyances with UI and certain things like that, not tracking certain things. But to me, it's hard to describe, right? Like I'm old. We'll start there, and the things that bother a lot of what I feel like are more modern.
Pete, but it's cool.
I feel like a lot of the things that bother some people in games around hand holding or explanations or making things simple and easy, they just don't bother me the same way. They just don't. And that, you can, maybe I'm unique in that, or at least in the minority in that, and that's okay, but that's just me personally. And so when I look at the things, I can recognize like, yeah, the game would be easier to manage if it had X, Y, and Z. Yes, it should have Z, etc. But as I said earlier, what I love about this game and what I love about what Bethesda does with these big Bethesda Softworks games over the years is they give you an experience that it's very difficult for other companies to replicate. And they are generally unique. And being able to just go into this world and pretty much do what you want right out of the gate is what I love. It's one of the reasons I loved Elden Ring. It's one of the reasons I love these games that just give you a sandbox and say, go have fun. And do whatever the hell you want to do. And I love that. That's one of my favorite things in games. And so, like Travis and I were talking, and we were talking about missions and certain things, and he's played it a lot more than me. I've got about 35 hours in it right now or so. But like I'm literally just like crawling around New Atlantis and different cities. I'm pickpocketing everyone. I'm stealing a bunch of crap. Like that's just how I enjoy playing. I just think it's fun. And like I've done a few really cool missions and stuff, and some of those, as you guys said, have really long threads to them, which you don't expect. And I think that's great. And I just think the ability for me to just say, yeah, I realize there's a main quest sitting over here, but I'm going to go, pickpocket 1,000 people and steal all the stuff out of their apartment because that's what I feel like doing. And the game supporting that, there's not a whole lot of games that do that. And I find a lot of enjoyment in that personally. So for me, the fact that it's given me this huge open sandbox, as you guys already said, I haven't really had any bugs or issues. It's been very smooth for me outside of the crashing I get on Xbox for some reason, but mostly playing on PC. It's been great. And yeah, I'm loving it. I don't, just my own thing, I don't like to say scores when I haven't put enough time in it to kind of formulate a score. So I don't know where I would be on the scale right now, but I am really enjoying the game. I'm able to overlook some of the the kind of nitpick, I won't say nitpicking, but some of the qualms people have with minor things, because to me personally, they just don't bother me. The experience, it's almost like, I guess the easiest way to say it is the experience is grander than the sum of its parts. Like, it's just an experience to me. And I love games that do that, and very few do it to the scale that Bethesda games like this do.
Yeah, I thought that was really well said. And I will say this, like, so if you guys are playing it and haven't really got into it yet, give it a little bit of time. This game grows on you. Like Umbra said, once you learn the systems a lot more, everything becomes a little bit easier. You learn how to inventory manage. You learn how to fast travel better. You pick and choose the missions that you want to do. There will be something for everyone in this game.
Yeah, literally, there's so many different ways to play it, and we saw that in the presentation in June, right? Like, I know as we were sitting there in the audience, me, Biscuit, Holly, etc., we were all like, "Man, this game has like everything. Like, you can play this game in so many different ways," and I just think that deserves calling out, right? That Bethesda created this sandbox that can be accessed in so many different facets, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, there's something special about this particular game, especially for me, because this is the first Bethesda game that I've sort of gelled with. But Travis, we definitely want to get your view on that. If you say 7 out of 10, the chat's going to explode. But we want to get your your point of view. So please, yeah.
My point of view. Yeah, I'll try to not say anything that other people have said and just focus on the stuff that I liked that hasn't been mentioned, or the stuff that I didn't like that hasn't been mentioned. Some of the stuff I liked, I think it's Bethesda's best storytelling so far, which I think they deserve kudos on. They clearly got the feedback from, I think, some of their other games where the main story especially didn't have a lot of punch to it, and I think they fixed that. I think that's awesome. I think the freedom and stuff, you guys kind of already touched on a lot of the positivity. Some of the negatives that haven't been brought up, I really think the procedurally generated worlds are a miss, like a pretty big miss for me. They you land on them and they have a couple points of interest, but mostly they're just there to, farm some resources or maybe get into a scrape or two for some extra XP or whatever. But that doesn't really feel like there's a lot of interesting stuff to do in the procedurally generated areas, and a lot of that, I think, like if it's night and day compared to, you do the Crimson Fleet storyline and you're on the highest of high, and then you're like, I'm just going to go do some random thing on a planet with no side quest, and you're like, yeah, that was a waste of an hour. Like, I don't know why I did that. So I think that's a pretty big miss. And yeah, some of the comments about it being bigger than the sum of its parts, I definitely think that's one way to look at it. And I think there's definitely nothing wrong with it to think of the combat's not the best in gaming, but it's good enough to get the job done here. And maybe the graphics aren't as good as a lot of its peers, but it's so big you can kind of forgive that. I think that's definitely a good way to look at it, and it's probably the way most RPG players, especially people who are familiar with Bethesda's games, look at it. But there's also an opposite view, which is, I don't want to compromise things like gunplay, or if I'm not having fun during gunplay and I'm doing a whole lot of it, that doesn't work for me. Or if I am really, really bothered by inventory limits, and that's a constant problem, or I have no sense of direction and I cannot remember things, therefore the lack of maps is a much bigger deal for me. I can see all sorts of opinions on this game. I have not really seen, except for the user reviews that are 0s and 10s for no reason. Those ones I see and I'm just like, okay, I don't get that. But I haven't really seen a whole lot of opinions that I can't at least see how somebody might feel that way. Because I kind of look at this game and to me, it's the definition of divisive. It's like either you're really into this sort of like clunky, but clunky in a good way type of RPG, or you're not, and you're just going to be lost and confused and the game's not going to help you. So I kind of get all of the different opinions. Where I land on it is I think it's an 8 out of 10. I think it's a great game. I wouldn't call it amazing because there's just a lot that holds it back. As for the bug thing, I think I can probably speak to that more than most here, because the game is surprisingly not buggy at the beginning, but once you play over 100 hours, it kind of starts at about 50 hours, or at least it did for me, and then after 100 hours, it started to get a lot worse. I mean, I know people who have hundreds of hours in this game now, and it's like getting really bad, which is kind of not new in Bethesda games. I don't know if you guys remember that from other Bethesda games, but like Fallout 4 especially, like the longer you played Fallout 4, the more that game sort of fell apart. And I think Starfield has some of that. I think the longer you play it, it starts to become a little bit less stable. So I think that will probably end up being a bigger problem for people the longer they play. Obviously, they're going to patch stuff. They're going to fix stuff. I hope a lot of that goes away. They definitely fixed some of their other games in the past, like Fallout 76 we were talking about, is one that they definitely put a lot of love and attention into. But yeah, from what I've played so far, I think it's a really, really solid game. I'm looking forward to putting a lot more time into it. But yeah, I wouldn't call it a masterpiece personally, just because there's a lot of stuff that makes me scratch my head. But I'm having a really, really good time with it, and I'm loving seeing all the love and positivity around this game, because I was really worried it was going to be the opposite. I really was. I thought it was going to be a bunch of like either people who were PlayStation fans just taking the opportunity to be mean, or people who were just like disappointed because expectations on this game were so high. I felt like if it wasn't a 10 across the board, people were going to be pissed. And I'm glad to see I was proven wrong. Like, it wasn't 10s across the board, but people are mostly kind of just enjoying it for what it is, warts and all. And I think that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, absolutely. And I definitely, you guys have all made some really good points, and I probably have played it the least out of everyone. And I've had one of the funniest bugs that you could ever possibly imagine. I have had a couple of bugs, and I made it into. I did a little bit of a clip with it, so I'll share that at the end of the show in the chat. You guys can go check that out because it is hilarious. But look, this is like I said, I don't like Bethesda games. Aren't my jam. Never have been. Their shooting's always been janky, even down to Wolfenstein. So I felt the gunplay in Wolfenstein was
shooting is not janky.
yeah, so it was really floaty. It wasn't tight.
No idea what you're talking about.
The what do you call it? It just felt sticky in parts. So when you know how they have I can't think of the word. Come on, brain.
Wolfenstein has some of the best shooting.
Yeah, it does.
I thought it was pretty good too.
Yeah, I mean, if you're
a
a Call of Duty player or a Battlefield player, and then you go to Wolfenstein, yeah, it feels floaty. It doesn't feel right. So that's always been my thing. And going back, I was a real dude, bro, and I more COD, more Battlefield, and that those games are all about the shooting, and so that's something that's sort of over time I've sort of adjusted to. Shooting in Starfield, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. I would say it's not serviceable. It's a little bit better than serviceable. But it feels good enough for me for what it does. It's an RPG, so the shooting isn't always the focus. I've played hours of this game without having a weapon in my hand. So because the shooting is not the A-all and B-all of the game, I can forgive that. Loading screens, there was a really simple fix for this, and I'm just sort of surprised that Bethesda didn't. I'm just going to go through some of the negatives first, and then I'll give you my positive at the end. There's a real simple fix for this. So you'll find when you're landing on a planet or you're taking off, there's the takeoff animation and the landing animation plus a loading screen. And there's sort of really no excuse in 2023 to have that. They could have just made that landing animation longer or the takeoff animation longer to sort of hide that loading screen. And I don't feel like they've made enough effort to integrate those loading screens into animations. And I think that's what people are complaining about without knowing it. I think that they're like, there's too many loading screens, and you're going to get those loading screens, but quite often these days what they do is they use clever tricks. And I don't think Bethesda used a lot of clever tricks, throughout the different loading screens. Encumbrance, that to me has been a real big problem throughout the game. I've sort of learned to manage it, and once you do learn to manage it, that's fine. Inventory systems, like having a storage space in your lodge that can just hold infinite amounts, but not being able to access it anywhere else in the world. That to me should have been linked to your ship. And managing the inventory is a constant thing. And I know that's a Bethesda trope, but it's something that annoys the shit out of me, because that to me is time wasted where I could be playing. So that to me is another negative. The traveling through space, you guys already sort of pointed out, is that it does. So when you jump into different planets and you have a procedurally generated event, they're the awesome parts of Bethesda. And I've had one that was like really amazing, ended up costing me 25,000 credits because I'm too nice. Should have just murdered everyone, but I paid up. That's the beauty of the game. There's just not enough of that. And I feel that going forward, Bethesda's obviously going to iterate on this and develop with this. And I think there will be, and that's something I'll get to in a minute. Vehicles. Yeah, we could have seen some vehicles on planets, and I would love to have explored planets on vehicles as opposed to on foot. Yes, there's a boost pack, and yes, you can fly around, but no, I don't think it's quite enough. But look, there's so much in this game that I don't think that that's a massive negative. The systems of how the game all works and integrates together is just, it's amazing that they have so many systems. And they all do work well together. And I think it's probably one of the most streamlined Bethesda games that I've played, but I don't have that much experience to say that, but I feel that way. Maybe a little bit more streamlining with things, just having to favorite your weapons and stuff like that. Maybe a bit more of a streamlined system. I don't know how you could have done that, or if you could have. Maps are a big issue, especially for people that I know that just couldn't find their way out of a paper bag in a game. And, like maps are just huge. I think the map needs a little bit of updating, and we'll see if that happens. Here's the good things, and here's a good bad thing. So item permanence. So item permanence is absolutely amazing in this game, and you can leave stuff anywhere in the world and then come back to it hours later, it's still there. Sometimes, though, because of a glitch or something that you've done, those items will be removed. And that's the not knowing what that line is a bit annoying. So there's a glitch on the ships where you can't store weapons on your shipwreck. Well, you can, but if you do, they can disappear. And that I don't like. I want to be able to use my weapon racks with the confidence to know that they're still going to be there, later on if I go into a mission that switches ships. I don't want to lose everything on the floor, which is one of the things that's happening at the moment. The good things. This game, taking down ships with VATs, like targeting their engines and boarding, that was one of the things, Ains, that I was like on board with when they showed us. And I was like wondering at the direct, I was like, I wonder if you can board these ships. And then they were like, boom, you can board them.
No doubt.
And you can keep them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is awesome. So I've boarded a few. A few I've not been able to fly because I don't have the skill set, which I'm not mad about. I get it. You've got to upgrade. You've got to do these things. So that's fine. So I'm working on my sort of ship-to-ship, my ship skills, and then getting my ship-to-ship combat is tight. That's just amazing. The amount of customization you can do with the ships is good. People are complaining about the builder. I think it's amazing. To have that inside of a game is just amazing.
Me too.
Yeah. And then
I love it. People don't like it because it's really hard to learn at first. But once you learn it, it's an awesome tool.
Yeah, it's really crazy what you can do with it.
I hate that you have to unlock so much. You have to spend 8 skill points to get all the parts. But other than that, it's awesome.
Yeah,
that part I don't care for either. It's like, damn, I want you make my stuff now.
That's it. That's it.
They make you wait for a lot of that game. This game likes to make you edge.
Yeah, it's a slow burn. That's maybe it. That's maybe a bit of a complaint of mine. But I understand that it's an RPG and it's a game they want you to be playing for an amount of time. And if you want to do everything, you can do everything. You've got to earn it. And I like that once you've earned it, you feel like you have. So I guess you could complain that it's a slow burn, but I also think that creates a rewarding feeling when you do get to somewhere. So now I wasn't gelling with this game at the start. This is the major positive. And you pointed out that mission. I wasn't gelling and something happened. I went into a store. Something happened. I was just trying to do an activity. I was going to mainline the quest. Something happened. And the next minute I'm on this journey, on this side mission that has now been going for a week. I didn't realize I was playing it on very hard. I actually said I was, and I was joking. I thought I had it on hard. I've had it on very hard the whole time. And I got to the end of this mission with the ship-to-ship combat. I had to drop it down to normal because it was just unbelievable.
Ooh, I know what quest that was.
Yeah. Unbelievable amount of ship.
I was stuck on that for like maybe 6 hours. I just kept dying and dying, and then eventually I found out you can just be a wimp.
Yeah,
and you can fly away from them as far as possible, and then pick them off.
Yes, that's what I did. Which is
what I did.
Yeah. So you fly. I dropped it to normal because I'm like, man, this game is huge and there's so much to do. I want to get this quest done and move forward. But yeah, what you do is you can pop in and like get the attention of someone and then just get out of there and have them follow you out, and then you can just nail them. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing.
With? Are you a pig?
Which what? No. I did the undercover thing.
You kept it true?
I kept it true all the way, yep. Didn't kill anyone that shouldn't have been killed. I did try to kill Larry about 50 times, but this is one other thing I don't like. If you kill someone in a room, no one should know you killed that person in the room. But for some reason, the entire ship knows and they're coming after you. I don't like that. I want to be able to...
Cameras. They have cameras installed future all around.
I want to be able to murder someone in private. What I wanted to do was play as a serial killer and like murder people and cut their heads off and then keep them in my ship. But you can't do that. So Todd, if you're listening,
you sided with the cops. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I did.
Pig. Boo this man. Boo this man.
But look,
him in the chat.
All over, I'm going to give this with the annoyances that it has. I would agree with an 8. I'm about an 8.5 at the minute. Because I've only done this massive one quest, and that massive one quest is probably a 9. But I haven't played enough to give it that 9. I'm wondering what the main quest does. I think the main quest will give me, or it'll either give or take away that point that I'm sort of holding on to. So I haven't used all my points. I'm on the 9 sliding scale. I'm just sitting at an 8 right now. But the game's amazing. It really, really is amazing. Look, guys, we've had a bit of a long show, and we sort of focused a lot on reviews, and we did want to hash that out for you guys because everyone in the chat that's been with us for any amount of time knows it's a topic that always comes up on the show. And it's great to have Travis come along and give us his take, and Ains as well. You guys both inside. We've got a smaller, I guess, independent site, and then we've got a large, IGN conglomerate site. The two views from the two sides, and that's sort of what I really wanted to give you guys in the chat today is like a bit of an overview. And obviously, our points of view and just sort of see what the pushback is from the guys who actually do the jobs, because we can critique those who do the job, but we don't do the job. So it's always great to hear from those who do. So look, guys, it's been an absolutely fantastic show. Ains, thanks for coming along. I honestly was a great time. Did not know Ains from a bar of soap when I arrived in LA. And met Ains, and he is a great dude. We had some awesome conversations just about gaming and about the industry and what goes on in and out. And it honestly was a great time. So, man, thank you for coming along the show. Let the people know where they can find you, what you'd be playing, what you'd be up to coming up in the near future. And if you do want to find Ains, you can head down in the description, and all of his links to Season Gaming, the podcast, everything is down there. So please do head out and follow all of those and check out his website. His site is amazing as well, by the way. The guys do great reviews. So let people know where they can find you and what you're up to in the near future.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you having me on. It was a great time. I was very happy to meet you and Holly out there, and obviously, need to talk more often and chat more. Yeah, so for me, it's simple, just seasongaming.com. As Biscuit already said, we do reviews, podcast, live show, articles, our channel. It's all there on the site. You can find it. Travis and I are 2 of the 4 members that do the Bitcast, which is our weekly live show. It is Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern. So it's the 2 of us. Hogue Law, who many know because he's done a lot of videos on all the legal aspects, especially like the Activision Blizzard acquisition, and then Dan Rodriguez, who's one of the editors over at SG2. So, we have a good time over there and good conversation. So it'd be cool if some of you jump over there and join us. But thanks for having me on. It's been awesome. Just playing the hell out of Starfield right now. Honestly, there's too many good games to play, but Starfield has kind of grabbed me. I should be reviewing Forza. My other passion in life is cars and racing, and Forza is one I've been obviously big on and talking to some people over at Xbox about. So I'm looking forward to talking about that here soon. And then I know a couple other games coming out that I won't touch on right now. But anyway, yes, it's been great having on. Thanks for the conversation. Glad Travis could come too and provide some perspective on reviews and just the media and everything else. And appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Travis, it's been thank you for coming on, giving us your take. That conversation that you and Ains were having with Hogue, and look, I do forget the other guy's name. Apology.
Dan
the man. Like the conversation it kept me up. I couldn't go to bed until I'd finished listening, and then it sort of grabbed me. So it's a good conversation to have, and I definitely wanted to have more of it here, and I think we did. So thank you for coming along, giving us your take. It was great to have you on, man. Just let people know where they can find you. And again, if you do want to find Travis anywhere, you can head down into the links in the description. I believe you're on a couple of podcasts. What are you up to for the next week?
Yeah, I am. You can read my review of Starfield on the Jimquisition. It's a great 4 out of 10.
It was you all along.
Nah, I'm fucking with you.
I knew it.
Yeah, it was me. No, you Yeah, I've got a review of you can find me on Twitter at TyGuyTravis if you want to follow me, which I'm sure most people in the chat don't, and that's okay. I don't care either way. If you don't want to follow me, you can tell your friends or your enemies to do it, let them take the hit. And then you can read all my content on IGN.com. Next week on Wednesday, I've got Liza P review going live at 8 a.m. Pacific. And then I'm doing some previews. I'm playing Airport Simulator. My next review is Payday 3. I'm doing a review in progress for the beta, which I'm really excited about because I really, really enjoyed Payday 2, and I'm hoping this one will be good. Thanks for having me on. Always enjoy talking about this stuff. I love the fight, and you guys were great.
Yeah, it was awesome to have you on, man. I appreciate your takes, both you and Ains. Umbra, another fantastic week, another podcast. Thanks for coming through for us again, man. I know you're sort of struggling because you've been smashing that Starfield, but let people know where they can find you, what you're up to, and then the week coming.
Yeah, no, man. I feel rejuvenated now. No, I don't. I'm really tired. But thank you, Ains and Trav, for coming through. Trav, is it okay I'm calling you Trav instead of Travis?
I don't care.
I just made up a nickname. Black people, we do that. I'm sorry to tell you, but we just make up a nickname for you out of nowhere.
I'm familiar.
Okay, yeah.
I grew up in Oakland, and they called me T Money for some reason.
Oh, see, listen, that was my next one. T-Dog, something was going to come out of there.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, thank you guys for coming through, and I think you gave some good insight as far as how things work, and so I think I'll pull back a bit on old poor Dan. No, I won't. No, but seriously, seriously, thank you guys for coming through, and of course to my host and co-hosts here, you always come through with a great take. So it's good to be here with you guys. As far as where you all can find me, of course, Twitter X. Infinite Umbra or Umbra Infinite, you will find me either way. And of course, The Fix on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern and Tuesdays at 12 Eastern on Boom's Xbox Factor. And see you all next week.
Absolutely. Jedi Knight, another fantastic. I will say Dan blocked me, man. And look, I made a joke. Maybe he didn't appreciate
All
it.
you did was wish him a happy birthday.
Trust me, it's not you. Dan pretty much blocks everybody. He doesn't listen to anybody.
He blocks anybody that he thinks is a fanboy. He has very low tolerance for people who say Xbox or PlayStation.
It's not low tolerance. It's like beyond zero. Like he's negative tolerance.
Did he block you, Ains? Did he block you?
But
I'm surprised he hasn't.
I wished him a happy birthday, and I hope he had a 7 out of 10 day. Like that was a nice.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, you said.
Oh no! I'm sorry. You're talking about Stapleton. I thought you meant Dan from our show.
No.
Never mind.
Dan Stapleton just blocks people if they have like an Xbox logo on their profile or whatever. He doesn't like that world, or PlayStation. He just doesn't like that world of fanboyism. It really bothers him, so he just blocks them.
That's why. No, because Xbox was literally giving out they were like, hey, give us your gamer tag and we'll shoot you back.
I'm exaggerating. He doesn't care if you do it, but if you're messaging him stuff that's like,
but that was funny. And look,
you're angry at him or whatever.
I wasn't angry.
I don't blame him for that.
I wasn't angry,
look,
but tell him I miss him.
I'm crazy. Right? I have 0 people blocked on Twitter. People think I'm crazy for that, but I'm like, you know what? I'll hear it.
You were a lawyer in a different life, right?
People
feel like to fight.
I'm just Jewish.
Pete, another fantastic week. Let people know where they can find you, what you'll be up to, what you'll be playing.
JediKnightPeter everywhere. Thank you, Ains and Travis. I loved having the conversation with you. It's always great talking to people.
Appreciate it.
Trav. I'm looking forward to your Lies of P review, bro. I was really looking forward to Lies of P, and then the demo didn't quite hit as hard as I thought it was going to, so I'm hoping the game gets better than what I experienced in the demo. I'll be playing Starfield. I've been hiding offline for 5 days. That will continue. I know that's a little bit unusual for me, but hey, it's one of those games.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, you have abandoned us all. We noticed. So
it's not anything that anyone's upset about. No, of course. Blue.
I was going to say Lords of the Fallen, by the way. Are you going to be playing that, Trav, and reviewing that or what?
Lords of the Fallen is my review after Payday 3.
Nice.
Blue, another fantastic week. Thanks for coming through and giving us all your takes. Let people know where they can find you, what you'll be up to, and how's your week looking? Blue.
Fortunately, back to work.
Is
yeah,
there? She's there. Yeah, no,
I'm
you're
here.
good. You're
I'm
good.
here.
She's good.
Hey, unfortunately, it's back to reality and real work now, so I'll have a little bit less time to get into Starfield, but I'll play, and of course 76 like every day. But thank you. I just want to say thanks to Travis for coming through and listening to all of us and fielding stuff and fighting a good fight for for all the reviewers out there that don't have a voice always. And your fiance and I are very happy that plushies are in the game, it sounds like, too, right? So post some of the pictures. That'd be good to see. I want to see the placement of these things.
Yeah,
And
she's on Twitter as Ty Girl Travis for some reason. So you can find her that way.
Funny. Oh, how cute. Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of stupid, but yeah, she is.
It's cute. I have friends that wear matching t-shirts and Jordans like everywhere. And I'm like, it's kind of cute. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of cute. It's all right. You're not married yet, so I'm sure that will all go away at some point. That's what I say to them.
Damn.
Ains, I am so happy to talk to you again, like voice to voice instead of just over a Twitterverse.
Right.
And
yeah.
yeah, and it sounds like we're still gaming besties on our opinions. That's nice to see. And yeah, I'm gonna hit you up, some more on your opinions on Nintendo and some of the other stuff that's coming out, and hopefully see you next year, right?
Yeah.
Nintendo.
That whole group has talked about LA again, man. It was a good time with everybody.
Yeah. It's
I'll
very
definitely
special.
be there. I've convinced everyone, so that everyone that needs to come. So bring my son along, bring the missus along. So it's going to be a fun time. Look, I do need to get out of here because I am actually at work currently, and I probably have to go off and do some. But guys, I just want to thank the guests again. You guys have been absolutely amazing. Really, really appreciate you guys coming through for us. Panel, you guys are always great. I did have a super chat from Enigmatic Dreams. He said I would like everyone's opinion on Sea of Stars. I haven't played it, and I
have.
What'd you think?
Great. If you like Chrono Trigger, old school RPGs, you'll like it. If you're not into that, you probably will think it's a little old school. Doesn't do a ton to evolve that genre, but if you're into that genre, it was made for you. It's a love letter to old school RPGs.
7 out of 10.
Our reviewer loved it. Eric reviewed it for us. He gave it a 9. He loved it.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard great things about it. But guys, that's it for the show. I'll just drop that my favorite bug of the game. I have just posted that in Twitter. Go and in the chat there. Go and check that out. It's absolutely hilarious. And we'll see you all next week.
Sure.
Same bat time, same bat channel.